Hey everyone, I'm Sean, founder of Fandom Empire and some of the other projects that we've had here at the channel. Tonight is a very big night for us. It is the launch of our The Mask of Fear project. We've worked endlessly around the clock for a couple of months on this. I know you might be thinking to yourself, another rebrand. Here we go. Well, as we've talked about in the past, there were some things that, uh, you know, tossed some of the other projects aside that got in the way. But the simple fact of the matter is, if it wasn't for the people that were, first of all, supported us, the audience, the people that signed up for Patreon, that super chatted, that just came in, hit the like button, and viewed our content throughout COVID and so many other things. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the success of Star Wars Wastelands back in the day at Channel 1138. Johnny and I wouldn't be here. Obviously, Fandom Empire was a huge part. It's what most people recognize this channel as. But going forward, this channel is now The Mask of Fear. But it felt right to thank the people that are no longer a part of the channel, because without their contributions, regardless, some of them are in good standing with us, and some of them aren't. Without any of their contributions, though, we would not be here today. So if you helped out in the past in any way, whether you were a team member or an audience member, we thank you. And we're looking forward to the next step here. Welcome to the Mask of Fear.
We wear the mask of fear. I am your host, Johnny V, and it's a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight for the debut episode of The Mask of Fear. We got a lot of great topics to get to tonight. We're going to cover a little bit of everything that we do here. We got horror, Star Wars, wrestling, the big three, if you will, around these here parts. But joining me tonight, as always, without them, there is no show, obviously. Tonight, obviously, Randy, how you doing this fine Tuesday evening?
Not doing too bad, even though this week has been a bit hellish, but it happens. That's just how it is. But it's pretty exciting just to get a chance to kind of start fresh, so to speak, and get something new out there. So I'm really excited to see where we go with this tonight.
And it's really going to be exciting. Of course, you heard him in the cold open. Sean, how you doing tonight?
Boy, it's been a day, and not a good one. But this one has been a lot of work to get to this point. I can say personally, I've never worked so hard on so much content in a 2 month span, and we're really happy with the way things look. And I don't know if it's weird because I got two screens going at once, and on the phone the intro was lagging, but on the laptop it wasn't. So I don't actually know what the audience see. But we'll work on it. Look, we use Restream to broadcast now. StreamYards is way too expensive these days. But we're here. And as Johnny mentioned, Johnny's going to be hosting this thing. This takes a little bit of pressure off me. I'm more of the producer role, co-host role in this new format that we're doing, and just really excited. We got a lot to get to tonight and in the coming weeks.
And before we get down to all of the topics and other things at hand, we got to take a moment to you guys in the chat. We're going to start introducing multiple choice questions, things for you guys to tell us in the comments. And tonight, our first one is this: does the Crystal Lake series need Jason? Comment down below A, B, or C. A, yes, the show needs Jason. B, it can work without him. And C, just give us damn Friday the 13th content. Give us your answer down below. Let us know A, B, or C. Of course, like, comment, subscribe, all that other stuff. Before we get down to the show proper, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors over at Patreon, patreon.com/The Mask of Fear, where you can become one of our sponsors. And of course, our main sponsors, we got Ryan over at Colleague Nation, who will provide you with all of your NASCAR needs, available right here on YouTube. Jason at Backtrack Cinema. Wow. Stumbled over that one. Retro Horror, one of the great sources here on YouTube for stuff like that. If that's your cup of tea, head on over, check his stuff out. It's all great. And of course, Jesse's Storytime Spectacular. It's kind of like us, talks about all the pop culture fun stuff he likes to talk about. So over there, check him out. And of course, there is also Matt, who is occasionally his co-host content, provides content for us here at the channel and one of our main sponsors. And of course, we have all of our other Patreon patrons, these guys right here. Without them, there is no show. We appreciate and love each and every one of you fine individuals. And if you want to join this hopefully growing list of sponsors, head on over to patreon.com/The Mask of Fear. Check out Patreon exclusive content over there. Who knows what you might see? Exclusive Halloween stuff, other bonus stuff. Who knows? You want to find out? Head on over patreon.com/The Mask of Fear and find out. Now, of course, here on this YouTube channel, you have our fine, lovely faces every Tuesday night. We're always going to be here. But that's not the only thing this channel is going to provide for you. Sean, I understand you have some things to tell our audience that are forthcoming here on the Mask of Fear YouTube channel.
Look, I believe in accountability. I believe when you're not doing something right, that you should do your best to change it, or you're not going to get the results that you seek. And our Patreon program has been less than desirable for the last year. Obviously, a little more than a year ago, I suffered a heart attack, and it really turned my life upside down. I'm very much still in the process of getting things sorted and figured out and getting back to some level of normalcy. And part of that is revamping our Patreon program. Look, when people spend their hard-earned money on the content that you do, you should be putting your best foot forward. And as part of this process, we're putting our best foot forward. And one of the big Patreon things from the past that people loved was our Halloween shows, and we have two brand new Halloween shows that we're debuting. The tiers are not up on Patreon yet. That will be this week. But first up will be one of our cheaper end tiers. It's going to be The Curse of Thorn. Everybody knows how much I love Halloween 4. 4, 5, 6 is for some people their favorite trilogy, if you will. Unofficial trilogy, I guess you could say. But The Curse of Thorn is going to be something where we take a look at Halloween rumors and news and things that we're hearing. If you followed our channel in the past, obviously, we've gotten quite a bit of accurate Halloween info in the past. Sometimes we've missed, but most of the times we hit. And this will be a monthly show, sometimes even bi-monthly. That's the thing with this one is sometimes you get it twice a month. And Matt, our good buddy Matt, is actually going to be my co-host on this show, and we will be joined by various other content creators while doing the show. And if you sign up for Patreon later this week, I believe you will find it at the $5 tier. So take a look on out for that. And then once a month, you will be able to find, named after our Facebook group, The Legacy of Halloween, where we will dive in to a bunch of the Halloween mythology, behind the scenes stuff. We're going to do behind the scenes stuff on the channel as well, but a lot of that's going to be short form content. This is going to be long form stuff, and if we get our hands on anything juicy in terms of spoiler territory, not rumor territory, spoiler territory, it will be on that show, which you'll be able to find at the $13 tier. And both of those shows launch this month. They're both going to have unique special Halloween intros. Matt is co hosting both with me. We may actually have a third full time co host on the Legacy of Halloween. That one will be strictly once a month, but we're still finalizing details on that. And last but not least, this graphic's outdated because we actually have a title for the show now. Debuting on the channel here, not on Patreon, but on the channel. Zach Arnold's returning and he will host this show. I will just be a co host. It is no longer the untitled show hosted by Zach and Sean. It will be a bi weekly show and it will be called West of Westeros. It's taken right from Game of Thrones. We will be talking about Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and Night of the Seven Kingdoms, all sorts of Westeros stuff. But in the back half of those shows, we will be going west of Westeros and talking about anything pop culture that Zach and I can come up with, and that's a show you'll be able to catch every other week here, hopefully live. That's the plan for now. But we don't have a date or time yet. We're still working on what the actual day will be and time will be for this show. But we have a lot coming. We really appreciate everyone's support. I know Dustin and Jerry have been asking about, and a couple other people too, about Patreon content. Well, again, if you want to sign up early, you can. I would suggest waiting on the tiers for later this week, though. Patreon.com/the mask of fear. And if you're already signed up for Patreon, the old link will not work. It is no longer patreon.com/fandom empire. You have to type in the right address. Patreon.com/the mask of fear.
There you go. Lots of great new stuff coming down the pipeline here on YouTube and, of course, over on Patreon. But if you want to be part of the ever-growing Mask of Fear family, head over to Facebook and join one of the groups. We have the Mask of Fear main group, where every day something will be going up. Today's Trivia Tuesday. And to this point, nobody has answered the trivia question yet. Not that hard a question, in my opinion. Of course, I'm the guy who came up with the question. But every day, something new and interesting, some of which we'll even talk about here on the show occasionally. Like Friday night, it's Face Off Friday. This week, I'm pitting two horror icons, 1v1. Who comes out on top? Give us your thoughts, give us your ideas. That's Friday. On Saturday, if you're a Star Wars fan and you think you can come up with the greatest spoof since Spaceballs, hit us with the pitch. If it's good, we'll read it on air.
I mean, I can. There's one that's better. So
there's one that's better than no, there isn't.
Spaceballs is here. Fanboys is here.
Fanboys isn't a spoof movie.
It is
not.
They break into fucking Lucasfilm Skywalker
That
Ranch.
doesn't make it a spoof movie.
It absolutely is.
No, Scary Movie. That's a spoof movie.
Come on now. Save the debate for a Patreon episode. There you go.
Fanboys is a buddy comedy in the Star Wars fandom. It's not a spoof movie. But that is something we'll argue about another day, because there's also Thoughts Thursday where, everyone's familiar with the Change My Mind meme. Well, every Thursday, change my mind.
Yeah, good luck with that.
This week, I channeled our good friend Kieran for this week's Thoughts Thursday. You'll have to tune in tomorrow. Check out the Mask of Fear Facebook group to see what that's all about and try and change my mind.
Well, that would mean tomorrow's Thursday, but it's actually Wednesday.
Shut up.
Don't you dare take my dynamite away from me, damn you.
Head on over to Mask of Fear Facebook page. Keep your eye on all the daily content. Of course, the Legacy of Halloween Facebook page, where you can talk about all things Halloween, new content every day. Sometimes it's questions, sometimes it's thoughts, sometimes it's history. Who knows what it's going to be, but there's always something there to talk about. And of course, you can always start your own topics on both pages. It's open to everyone. Of course, keep it clean. Well, clean enough. All right, let's move on. Put on our first mask. This week, the first mask we wear is the mask of horror. And on this week's horror segment here on the Mask of Fear, of course, as I said, every week we are going to have our multiple choice questions kick off each segment this week. Your multiple choice question in the horror section is: does the Halloween TV series need a second killer if Michael is locked up in prison for most of the series? Answer A, yes, absolutely. It's not close. Put up the wrong graphic on me. All right,
Laptop's already dead, so I'm working off a phone right now.
Answer A, we only want the shape. Answer B, another killer helps the series. And answer C, who cares? Just give us Dr. Loomis. Tell us down below in the comments, A, B, or C, which one your answer is. All right, guys. It's time for our first topic of the evening. We've talked about it a lot. Obviously, we're talking Crystal Lake. This week, we are hearing that Jason may appear in Crystal Lake. Sean, you have more details for us on this topic?
Yeah, so the truth is, and I apologize, the TV has just done something weird, and I have no light over here now. So that's about how today has gone. But yeah, no, you're going to be hearing a lot, like a significant amount of Crystal Lake news coming out, not just from us, but from other places over the course of the next few weeks. To be honest, it's going to be a hotbed. If you're a Friday the 13th fan for news, we asked off the top a multiple choice question. You're going to get all sorts of different multiple choice questions on this show. So if you're watching live or you're watching after the fact, please share your answers below. We want everyone's thoughts. The engagement helps us as well. If you ever want to, by the way, change the topic or have a question answered that's not what we're talking about right now, send in a super chat. Yeah, Google takes half of it, but every penny helps with what we're doing here. It's not cheap to do this sort of thing. But in terms of Crystal Lake, man, it's sort of putting two and two together. And the big one is, as we know, Linda Cardellini has been cast as Pamela Voorhees in the series that's about to begin shooting. And we actually have a Crystal Lake video coming out later this week, hopefully in the next couple of days, but it might not come out till Friday just because of how much work, how much of a workload we have right now, which will give you a bunch of significant behind the scenes details on the series. Some of you've probably already heard, some of you might not have. But this is what was given to me specifically from one of the sources that we used on this channel for years for Halloween information. He's fairly close to the project. And he said to me, Linda Cardellini hasn't just signed on to play Pamela Voorhees while she's alive, but as well after her death. And if you can't put two and two together, that means you are in fact getting Jason Voorhees in the Crystal Lake series. And I know there was some discussion whether we would still do that or not after they changed the showrunner from Brian Fuller to someone else. They went back and rewrote a bunch of stuff, and some of the things are no longer lined up with what they used to be. When it was Brian Fuller's show, we knew we were getting Jason eventually. Once it changed to, I forget the fellow's name, but the guy who's doing Welcome to Derry, it was unsure if we would get Jason. And while I can't sit here and confirm in official capacity that we're getting Jason in season one, I can tell you the plan is for Linda Cardellini to play Pamela Voorhees while she's alive and after her death, which would seem to indicate the hockey mask more than likely is returning again. And I think that will make Friday the 13th fans very happy because it has been 16 fucking years since we've gotten anything relevant to the Friday the 13th franchise. My question to you two, though, is how do you feel about this?
Randy, what do you think?
So I'm not mad at it just because I think the idea of getting to see her, fall into the madness after the loss of Jason and to sit there and watch her just deteriorate and then to see her come back as Jason's conscience, essentially, I think that's actually going to add a lot. Obviously, we've known in the movies, that's something that's always driven him, was his mother. And the fact that now we'll get to hear, even like they did in the Friday the 13th game, you get to hear Pamela Voorhees talk to you as you play Jason. So I think that is really going to kind of be a neat little thing that we never got before in I would say either TV or movie, and it's actually pretty exciting to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely an intriguing idea. To sort of encompass this in a more than just prequel sort of way. Like that's a great idea and everything, but how much meat is there on that bone really? Um, and I think easily you can get one season out of it. Maybe two or three, depending on quite how the story goes. But having that long term plan in place, I think, is very important. For the long term health of a show, is to have a multi season outline so that you're not flying by the seat of your pants season to season, which a lot of shows tend to do in the more recent era. So having that plan in place, I think, is the best idea they can have to include Jason as well as Pamela, because you need that. You need that thing that people grasp to. You can only hold on so long. It's sort of the Bates Motel principle. You can only have those characters be in prequel mode for so long before you sort of need to catch up to the events people are expecting. It's the same as we talk about Fuller's Hannibal series a lot. You still had to do a lot of the things that set the table for the events that would be forthcoming in the canon stories. Now, obviously, they never got to Silence of the Lambs, but they did a great job of Red Dragon, and the stories that came before that. So, you can definitely play with these things and play with those characters and build up towards the events that people are expecting, like Jason emerging from the lake. That's the thing people are going to expect, and eventually it's going to happen. My bet is it probably happens at the end of a season finale, because that's the most likely place for it. But it's going to be interesting. I look forward to seeing it. I hope it all comes together in a good way. I'm excited for this series, and time will tell, how it lives up to that, and whether or not we get what we want, what we expect, and how long it lasts. If this is a 1 or 2 season show, it might be a moot point that they had plans for Jason. We may not get to him. So we'll just have to wait and see, how successful it is critically and, viewership wise, and how long they're willing to let it run. So obviously we'll talk about that a lot though over the next few years.
If I had to guess, um, he'll be at the end of season 1, and that'll be your promise for season 2. That's how I expect them to construct this thing. And I know there's some people that have the information wrong in terms of, oh, well, they can't use the hockey mask. No, they absolutely can. They can use any Friday the 13th asset they want as long as it's on TV. What they can't do is go and use it in a movie. Johnny, can you read this comment on screen? I'm on my phone. I can't make it out, but I think it's relevant. I say,
Breezy in the chat asked, which is the best overall Jason? Zombie Jason, Hunter Jason, or Uber Jason?
I don't know if I'm going to pick one of those answers. My favorite rendition of Jason, and it's an unpopular answer, is the Derek Mears Jason, by the way. Thank you again, Randy. But Derek Mears from the remake, love that movie. Obviously, Jared Padalecki fan here, big Supernatural fan. I just love the way he's depicted in that movie. Like, that's a guy you don't fuck with. What's going on, Sham? Welcome back, buddy. Same to you, Nick. I sent you a message earlier, a DM on X. Let's connect and we'll figure out something in terms of getting linked up, buddy.
I mean, of those, I'd probably choose Hunter because Zombie Jason is that's basically the New Line era, and that was garbage. um, and Uber Jason, I don't know. I like my killers more normal, and like not normal, but more human, and that is not that. Randy, did you have one of the three?
Oh, come on, man. You don't like Uber Jason?
No. Probably because the first thought that comes to mind when somebody says Uber Jason is Jason X, I want no part of that.
Well, I mean, that's I get it, but no, I'm kind of with Sean. Like, I really enjoyed Derek Mears' portrayal. Not to say that I don't like what CJ Graham did in Six or Kane Hodder as Jason in general, but yeah, I would definitely go with like the more uh, sadistic, cerebral Jason that Derek Mears portrayed for my favorite Jason overall. But Hunter Jason, yeah, I would go for that too. On out of those three choices,
Yeah,
Yeah,
hey, you better be able to run because if you can't run against Derek Mears, Jason, you're fucked. Like he
pretty
is going to
much.
run you down.
it is definitely yeah, that is for sure. Although personally, I prefer my serial killers and horror icons to be walking slow guys because at least then I have a chance to might be able to get away. But I digress. That's different for another day. Let's move on to our next topic. Where if you were here for the multiple choice
Can
question
you
earlier,
read Nick's thing there again? I can't quite make it out.
um,
He
Richard
mentions his
Brooker.
favorite.
Richard Brooker is his favorite. Jason.
Nice,
Yes.
nice dude. By the way, Nick, I'm ashamed to admit I haven't been able to keep up with the content lately, but I hope you're still doing it. Nick was always one of the most genuine content creators we came across who told it like it is, and I believe in people that do that. And Nick was always a good guy and always great with his time in the past, and looking forward to reconnecting.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. Like I said, if you were here for the multiple choice question off the top of the segment, you can probably guess what we're going to be talking about next. And of course, we have the Halloween series forthcoming. Hopefully, question mark, maybe, possibly, who knows? Um, but how does this series work if you add another killer into the mix with Michael and the Shape being sort of sidelined with that? Sean, obviously, you're the go-to horror guy here around these parts. So, what do you got for us on this one?
Man, this is tough because I get asked all the time still, what's going on with the Halloween series, and unfortunately, the answer I have for everyone is we don't know. I wish I could sit here and say that we have the scoops right now and have great inside information. But I go back to in my opinion, the last reputable thing that came out about this series was covered by Cinestealth, who's very accurate, and 3C Films. They deserve the credit for doing the legwork on what they did. And we'll leave the whole Jamie Lee Curtis was approaching a behind the scenes capacity for another episode because that makes my stomach turn, to be honest. But we know this: the plan that they were working on was the Shape was in a maximum penitentiary facility, like a maximum security facility, um, not Smith Grove. Don't confuse it with Smith Grove. That's not the plan they were working on. That's not to say that's not what ends up happening, but the last we knew is that the Shape was in a maximum facility or maximum security facility, and that the series would lead into a movie. And after that, details were sparse. So back when Dean and I were doing Haddonfield and Beyond, one of the things we kept toying with is, and we heard rumblings of, but never anything concrete, was this is going to be a Haddonfield series. Not that the series would be titled Haddonfield necessarily, although I would not rule that out. In fact, I think that's an incredibly strong possibility. But if you're doing a series like that, and you're going to have the guy that everybody wants to see behind bars for, let's say it's 8 episodes, seems to be the go-to for a lot of series these days that go to streaming. Let's say it's an 8 episode series where most of your episodes are 45 minutes to an hour. If the Shape isn't breaking out of that facility till the end to lead into a movie that I had to guess is being scheduled for the 50th year anniversary, um, you better have something else that is pulling your audience in. You better have relatable characters, interesting protagonist, You better be not just in the maximum security facility, but in Haddonfield, getting to know characters. But you can't just be following their everyday life for 8 fucking 1-hour episodes, fellas. There needs to be something else happening, whether it's at the facility or in Haddonfield. And, I think people relate back to the Charlie Bull story, from Halloween 78, Loomis and the Graveyard Keeper. I'm not saying it's Charlie Bowles. I have no fucking clue. And I'm not even saying there is going to be another killer in the Halloween series. But I'm saying if you have the shape behind bars, I think you need it. I think this is your opportunity to bring in someone new while still having the shape weight in the wings. And I'm not saying that this needs to play out like Corey from Halloween Ends, where it's a bit of a copycat scenario, but someone tangibly different. And you got to be careful because you don't necessarily want Michael Myers coming across like an anti-hero, yet I would argue he already does for the diehard Halloween fans. It might sound sick and twisted, but people love seeing the shape. People love seeing the shape go out and kill people. Um, when I look at that, I go, well, you need something to carry this show, and it can't just be the shape on trial, or the shape being talked to by Loomis and others. And I don't know if Loomis will be in the series or not. The last thing that we talked about on this channel when it was Haddonfield and Beyond was there seemed to be some fear about recasting Loomis again because of how poorly it went with zombies movies, despite me absolutely loving what Malcolm McDowell does in a comedy way anyway. Um, there's some worry about trying to recapture that Donald Pleasance aura. And look, we've talked about it with Star Wars. If you find the right person, it's about carrying on the character's legacy, not the actors. Donald Pleasance, I didn't know the man personally, died when I was very young, but I feel like he would not have wanted the character to waste away. Much in the same way, you can't convince me Carrie Fisher would have wanted Leia to waste away. I don't believe that for a second, not a single solitary second. So I do believe that there's a method to the madness here where you can introduce a new killer, still have Michael be a big part of the series, but maybe he kills the killer in that final episode. But if I were them, I would have him. His whole goal is he could be hearing about this killer in the facility, and he wants to get out there because Haddonfield's his territory. That doesn't mean he's just going to go after the killer. He's going to kill people on the way, but that's how you set up that movie. They've talked about Trancas and Miramax have talked about at length last year how they wanted a series to build into a movie, which in my opinion is backwards. But if that they're dead set on doing that, to me, and I've talked about it before on this channel, the perfect way to do that, in my eyes, is you have the shape escape at the end of that one season leading into the movie. And the movie's designed in a way where you don't need to see the series, but if you did, you get more from it. But you end that 8th episode with him donning the mask and the coveralls and walking out into Haddonfield. Maybe he's passing the entering Haddonfield sign, and the Halloween music swells up for the first time in the entire series. And we'll see you in theaters next year if the series does make a 2027 release date. That's the area that I think they need to get to, because you need to attract an audience that is the Halloween audience again, but you need to attract a general audience if you want ratings and you want to build up a movie. Uh, what do you fellas think? What does the audience think? Would love to hear.
Well, I'm going to say this. Bring it, and you kind of sort of mentioned it. Bring up the idea of another killer. Obviously, a lot of people, their mind is going to go to ends with what happened there. Obviously, that's not the case here. That's not what they're. Hopefully, that's not what they're going for. But I like the idea of maybe similar to kind of. I mean, you could use, like, and I'm going to say maybe social media or something to that effect of just current times, current technologies, where you have, fanboys of Michael Myers, and that because of these videos and these archives that people have gotten a hold of and it's gotten out there into the world. But also, I mean, that's part of it. You don't want to sit there and focus solely on that. Obviously, if Michael's in prison, that's fine. And obviously the whole idea is we need to spend some time there with him escaping, uh, to confront, these other killer or killers, depending on which way they decide to go, because there can be only one, to quote the Highlander. um, but ultimately here, we need something that's going to kind of give us something that's really going to make us feel, I don't know, like in the case of the scenes, like if Michael's in a prison, I would love to feel that claustrophobic feeling of, like, of him being in there and trying to figure out a way to get out, with obviously not talking, just his actions. But also, it's just, you got to tread lightly with this. You don't want to recreate anything that's attributed to ends in any way, shape, or form if you did go this route. And we want to make sure that we're building up other characters as well, that's going to be leading towards a movie. We don't need to have main characters dying off. If we're going to do a one season into a movie, we want to make sure those characters survive to the movie as well, just so there's some emotional weight to it. Because ultimately, if we're going to do a series into a movie, you want to feel like there's some stakes. You want to feel like, you're attached to something. You want to feel a reason to go to the movie, not just because of Michael Myers, but because of these characters you've grown to actually like and enjoy, and you want to see where they go as the series goes into a movie. Um, but beyond that, um, I'm a little skeptical about it, just because I don't know really what their true idea is here, what they really want to do with it. It's just, I think it's, just, you know, for me, it's just speculation on the fact that it's got to be done right. It's got to be a proper tone, and it's got to give us something that will make us actually feel something and want to go to the movie. Obviously, to enjoy Michael being free again and going on a killing spree, but also, um, ultimately facing off against. I wouldn't call it, not wouldn't call it copycat. You could be. I mean, it could be a copycat similar to Ends, but in the sense of something different. As long as they try to steer everything as far away as possible from Ends, I think it can work. But ultimately, that's just got it. That's what they have to do. If they don't do that, then we're going to have an Ends something similar to Ends on our hands, and people just aren't going to go to the theaters to see that because they've already seen it.
I think it's almost a necessary evil if you're going to take Michael off the board, that you need something else to push the needle. And if that is someone else, trying to capitalize on the shape, and the mystique of Michael, I think that's a great element. They kind of toyed with that idea in Ends, but did it in a very piss poor way at best. And I think if you can do it in a good way, in a compelling way, it has the potential to make this worthwhile as a series. Because I think, if you look at, and now obviously, with this, we're sort of throwing out everything that happened in the modern trilogy, and washing our hands and going backwards to go forwards again. And that's all well and good, but one of the good things I think that they captured in the new trilogy through Michael was sort of the, I don't want to say complacency, but the emptiness in him while he was locked up. In that, it wasn't really until, he was presented with the mask that he sort of got that fire back in his belly, and decided he was going to go and finish what he started all those decades ago, which I thought was compelling. Because it did sort of play off that, how do you keep Michael Myers down? You don't. He keeps himself down because he's empty, he's hollow, he is a shell of a human. And I think if you do this right, you can play that. You don't need Michael necessarily to be off screen to do this either. You can shoot him from the back. You can have him in his cell, getting dinner, or just having guards walk past who are, part of the story in some way, who, do the exposition while Michael is in hearing range, and you can hear it. And, at some point you can get the fire back in his belly, where, that's sort of what reignites uh, the fire inside Michael, which is something you need if he's locked up. Because, as it, who was it in the chat? It was Jerry. If it's a maximum security prison, how does Michael escape without it becoming too fanciful? That's true. I think part of the thing you need with Michael is the mystique. I don't want to see how he escapes. Like, I don't, like, not in full anyway. Like, if you see him reach through the bars and, strangle a guard or snap a guard's neck and take his keys and walk out the front door, I think that works for Michael, because that sort of plays into his gravitas. You don't need to see like some convoluted escape plan like this at Shawshank. That's not how Michael works. He is going to, grab the guard who brings him dinner, snap his neck, steal his keys, and walk out the front door, and nobody's going to stop him. That's how Michael works. And how do you keep it from being too fanciful? I think you need a warden character in the story mixed in with the guards who's trying to keep it under wraps, who's trying to play it off like it didn't happen. This can't happen on my watch, and they sort of play it down that way. So it is something you can do within the bounds of storytelling, because otherwise, you're right, this would be a big deal. This is Michael Myers, who has gone on a killing spree, who is, one of the upper tier serial killers, held in prison. So yeah, it would be a big deal once the world finds out about it. Because if you've already got someone in Haddonfield going around sort of doing his dollar store Michael Myers impression and killing people and making people question, sort of the supernaturality of Michael, how can he be doing these killings while he's locked up? You already have that element at play, that when the real Michael gets out, you just sort of paint the brush with the serial killer, with the new guy. It's him. This is the copycat. This, rest assured, Michael is still safely locked up in whatever facility he's locked up in, because he's under such tight lock and key, nobody can get in to see him. Whether that plays into, Dr. Loomis being a part of this and figuring out the difference and realizing that, it stopped being, this started being real some time ago, sort of thing, or that's when you introduce. Well, however you're going to tell the story, there are ways to do it that keep Michael off of the main page until it's time to move to the end game. Now, whether you take the route of the movie being Michael versus the fake, not in a versus sense, but, Michael retaining his mantle and, regaining his town, or if you go the route of this is, he kills the serial killer at the end, the world finds out he's free, and now the chase is on, and do a movie based around that, I don't know. But either way, I think there are a lot of ways you can tell this story, a lot of good ways you can tell the story, and that's what it's going to come down to. In the chat, we had a lot of people. I think you pulled it up on screen briefly. Troy said, "What are the odds this series doesn't happen at all?" Well, somewhere above 0 and less than 100. We can't really be any more specific than that right now, because like Tony said, like Troy says in another comment, there's no writers or directors attached to the series yet. If we don't hear anything this October, could it not happen? Absolutely. I think when we passed last Halloween without anything, we started to question it. Once it looked like the website was going to be a thing, and it was like December when they relaunched the website, and we thought there was something coming with that, and there wasn't. It's just, there's so many opportunities coming and going, that if an entire calendar year passes without some degree of news from Halloween to Halloween, when we've been talking about this series since, the end of last summer, yeah, it's time to start questioning, is there even anything happening here? Or is anything even going to happen here? And if it does, is it too little too late? Are we going to pass our window? All those sort of questions. It's just a matter of time before we have to start asking them in a real and actual manner. But we still have time before we get to that.
We're nowhere close to that. Let's calm down, people. Let's look at the past here and the facts, because there are facts. The fact is, Miramax paid a significant amount of money for TV rights. Now, that might mean a little less if it was someone else had, say, A24 won out on them. Why does it mean more that Miramax won? Well, very simple. They're the co-owners of the movie rights alongside Trancas. And that adds increased value to it. So we're early still. Do I believe that they wanted to have a series ready for 2026? 100%. Do I believe they've hit some snags on the way? Absolutely. For sure. Do I think we're at risk of this thing being canceled yet? No, I don't. But I do think somewhere in a Trancas room, you have, the powers that be with a big circle around the 50th anniversary. And they're going, we can't just release a 4K set or, a behind the scenes or a nice book. They're already doing that shit before then. They want a movie. They want a theatrical release for the 50th anniversary. But they want to do the show first. This isn't a show that's going to require a massive amount of CG or take 2.5 years to turn around like a House of the Dragon or a Lord of the Rings. It just doesn't. But does it mean that the show has no chance of being canceled? No. They very well could pivot and decide we're just going to do the movies because we can't get the show off the ground. Don't read in. And Troy, I've seen you post this on a couple other channels. I've been doing my homework, man. I've been very quietly watching people over the last couple months as we prepare for our rebrand. I'll be sitting here doing work, and the amount of graphics that we've put together and various other things. I've listened to a bunch of people during that time, so I've seen this exact comment from you somewhere else, and it's important to remember this, Troy, and everyone else here. Whether you agree with how they do it or not, typically Trancas has the idea for what the Halloween, well, not series, I should say, but movie has been in the past. And then a creative comes in and builds off that idea. Almost, not none, but very few Halloween movies are brought to them by a creative, and then they go from there. It's them working off of an idea by Trancas, which again is a little backwards, but so is the series leading into a movie in terms of the ability to go from small screen to big screen. Less so in the streaming days, but there are things happening. It's not like nothing has happened. It's not like there's not even people attached. We thought Steph Hutchinson was attached for a while, and another YouTube channel privately debunked that to us, but that YouTube channel also got something else significantly wrong. And I can't sit here and tell you if Steph's involved or not. I don't think they know. I don't know. But it would be ashamed if he wasn't approached, because I can tell you for sure, 100%, regardless of what anyone else tells you, this is coming from someone that would be far in the know-how than us or another YouTube channel. I can tell you that at the time that a certain Halloween book came out in the last few years, Steph Hutchinson was actively working with Malaka Cad on various projects. Were they Halloween based or not? I don't know, but there was still a partnership there. Now, a lot can happen in a few years, as we've seen here, but don't rule out the possibility that it could get canceled. But typically, when someone pays a significant amount of money, they want some return on that investment, and it just could take them longer than you want to get this series out. But they're on the clock if they want to do things the way that they've laid out to us. They've laid out to us that there are going to be Halloween characters that we know from the past in this series. They've laid out to us that Michael Myers will be in this series, and they've also laid out to us they would like the series to lead into a movie. Well, if they're dead set on a movie being the 2028 release, they are running out of time. Does that mean that something needs to happen by this October? No, it doesn't. It's 2025. You could get the information in 2026. You could get it in late 2026. They could shoot in early 2027, and the series could come out in October of 2027. It wouldn't be all that different than what happened with Halloween 2018. That being said, I understand that this is a volatile subject right now just because of the lack of an official information. And then, as Johnny brought up, we did have them building up this big Halloween portal website, and they made people believe that it was going to be this big new thing. And pardon the pun here, but it's complete fucking dog shit that I could put together something better in my sleep. I'm sorry, it just is. And hopefully that changes. Hopefully we get some official words. And also, if you don't think the people at Trancas and Miramax are sitting here going, let's watch what happens with let's watch what happens with Crystal Lake. Let's watch what happens with Welcome to Derry. And then pivoting off of some of that, you're crazy. The Scream TV series was successful in the beginning and fell off. I Know What You Did Last Summer failed. Chucky, successful in the beginning, fell like a rock in the ocean. So these series only seem to be successful for a short period of time. And anyone who's clamoring for Mike Flanagan still, stop. It's not happening. The dude is way too busy. No one wants Flanagan involved in Halloween more than me. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I
Again,
think
sorry. Again, if I just saw a comment earlier about we skipped something, I didn't see any plot twist comment.
that was back in
Um,
Crystal Lake. It was
um,
a pitch to get to a Michael versus Jason movie.
oh well, hey, if had A24 won the rights, that could have been
Maybe.
a legitimate possibility, but they didn't. They were bidding, but they didn't. Um, and also remember, we try to get to as many comments as we can, but it is really important that the channel still generates revenue. So if you're desperate to have your comment read and we've gone past it, it's not personal. Feel free to send in a super chat and you'll be guaranteed to have your comment read on air. But you know what you can do for absolutely free? Click the like button, subscribe, turn notifications to all. Helps us a lot.
Indeed. I think if we get to October and we've heard absolutely zero, like not even an official announcement, yes, we're working on it. Yes, it's officially happening. It's coming in blank, blank, blank. That's when the warning light starts to blink for me. It's not the big klaxon like, hello, we're sinking, ship, man overboard. But, the check engine light comes on in October. That's for sure.
They're going to be asked. Like,
Oh,
make
yeah.
no mistake about it. Miramax, it's not like it's their only project. They're not as big as they used to be. But Miramax is eventually going to have something else that comes out, and someone's going to stick a microphone in their face and go, what's going on? They cannot avoid this forever. Information, one way or another, is going to come out, whether it's from someone small like us or someone gigantic like an official trade, or even a place like Cinestealth again or 3C Films.
Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see. All right. To finish off the horror segment of the evening, Sean, you have a question for the fans?
Couple of them, actually. Let's do some fun fan engagement stuff, because the more you guys comment, the better it helps the stream. Even not just when we're live, but after the fact. So if you're watching live at the moment, be by your keyboard or your cell phone or your typewriter. I don't think that's a thing anymore. But we'll start easy here. If you think Michael Myers should be in prison for the Halloween series, put a 1 in the chat, just the number 1. But if you're against him being in prison for most of the series, put a number 2. We'll give you a minute or two to do that. Again, if you think Michael Myers, if you're okay, rather, with Michael Myers being in prison for the series and a good chunk of it, please put a 1 in the chat. And if you're completely against it, put a 2 in the chat, whether you're watching live or after the fact. Johnny, I'll ask you while we wait for some feedback to come in. Um, do you think it can work if Michael's in prison for most of the time?
Sure, absolutely. It's not hard for me to picture that. Like I said, you just need a compelling story outside of that to reignite the fire within Michael. Especially depending on how long it's been since the events of the first movie. I think that's going to play an important factor. Like if Michael's been in prison for 15 to 20 years, depending on when they set this thing, you need to explain why he's still there. If all of a sudden he's just going to wake up one day and decide, nah, you know what? I've had enough of this. It's time for me to go. I'm done here. Goodbye. And just walks out the front door. Like, why couldn't he have done that 20 years ago? Why didn't he do that 20 years ago? Because let's be honest, I imagine, and this is just me speaking purely hyperbole, it would have been a lot easier to escape a maximum security prison in 1979 than it would be in 1992. Just based on improvements in,
Or even like 1980s, if this thing was set
exactly.
way
Like,
back then. And I do believe, before you can, I do believe their first intent was to do this as a period piece. But as you know, that's expensive to do now.
mhm.
The further we get away from, like, say, 1982 or something, the harder it is and more expensive it is to make things look like it's 1982 and have it believable.
I
I
think the
do have
'90s are a much more doable decade.
I love the
Just
90s.
just based on sort of the difference in technology from 1990 to 2025 is far smaller than from 1970 to 1990. Like just on that alone, early '90s, you have the sort of increased popularity of cell phones, and that, granted, they were all giant bricks, but they existed. They were there. Pagers, computers were starting to be a thing. The technology was a lot closer to what it is today than what it was then, barring the
I
example
pull out
of,
my
I mean,
Zach Morris phone. I need to call the police for help.
that's the only thing that's really different, is that they've shrunk, and they've gotten more sophisticated. But it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to pass off 2025 as 1990 than it is 1982. It just is. It's a lot easier to do that.
I have a different question for Randy in a second, but first I'm going to ask the chat. Um, if you think this series absolutely needs Dr. Loomis in it, put a 1 in the sorry, not a 1 in the chat, put a 3 in the chat, please. If you think that Dr. Samuel Loomis needs to be in this series and you are okay with them recasting the role, and because remember, this guy's gonna in that case appear in that role unless they kill him off early for more screen time than we've probably ever seen anybody in the role. So it is a lot of pressure. Put a 3 in the chat. But if you were against seeing someone else play Loomis again, put a 4 in the chat, please. So a 3 if you're for Loomis, or a 4 if you think they should avoid him. Randy, where do you fall in the Loomis debate, man? Can they, or should they even replace Donald Pleasance?
I feel like that this is something that has always been tied to Michael Myers, regardless of whether you have Donald Pleasance or Malcolm McDowell play him. It's the idea that he is the counterpoint to Michael Myers. I think it would really help with a lot of the story building. It would help with, even if he's part of like we've brought up in the past, a survivor, like a survivor's guilt class, where he's not only someone who you know is leading it to try to help people get back on with their lives, but also is someone who needs this sort of thing as well. Because if we can delve into the psyche, that because we've seen everything that this man has done, leading all the way up through 6, and we saw that descent into madness to where he just got to the point where it was all about stopping Michael, period. But if we get to the point where we can actually sit there and see where his mind went and see how he got to this point through like therapy sessions and things of that nature, where he's helping others and people are helping him, and go for it. I think that would be great. That'd be a great way to flesh out his character even more. And it's worth, as long as the story's strong enough and you have a good script, the director, you have a solid director, and I'm sure you could find an actor who could pull it off, no problem. We don't have to have a look-alike. I mean, if they feel the need to do that, I get that, but it's not necessary. And if you're that scared to recast him, then you're taking out a big, huge potential chunk of story that could be extremely compelling and really make you feel even more for the character as you look at him through rewatching the movies again, because you're going to sit there and you're going to have that perspective from the TV series of his mental state and how it deteriorated and how he finally got to the point of where he was, versus, yeah, we just know Michael drives you insane. He always seems to keep coming back. You're just trying to stop him. I would love for them to do that. I would love for them to just take us in that direction where we see him having to deal with this psychologically, and it would really add depth to the story, his story, and also maybe even shed some more light on Michael as well, because he's going to talk about his sessions. He's going to talk about the things that he's witnessed him do, and he's tried to get through to him on. I think really that could really help be part of the crux of the story.
Sorry, adjusted my camera. Um, I don't have too much to add on Jerry's comment here, but I wanted to take it since it's not a topic on the show. Thought Netflix to dumb thing was awful. I don't have anything positive to say about that Happy Gilmore trailer, unfortunately. Hopefully the movie's better. Not counting on it. But the one thing that I did take from that to dumb event is that Frankenstein movie done by Del Toro looks fan fucking tastic with Oscar Isaac in it. You give me an actor of Oscar Isaac's caliber playing Loomis, yeah, I'll sign up for that. Go get Liam Cunningham. I'd be all over that. I know me and Wolfman's got Nards, Barry have been all over that, fanboying for that casting. Will it ever happen? Probably not. But boy, a man can dream.
I had one word to describe to dumb. Dumb.
Eventually the Roadcaster's going to come back, and that would get some horns, man. Yeah.
All right. Let us move forth and mention that was the last one, right? You only had two?
Yeah, Byron. Liam Cunningham, man. He's my number one for sure.
I don't have a choice. I haven't really put too much thought in it, but
Well,
that is something we'll come back to.
Show.
That's something we'll come back to for sure.
100%.
All right, let's move forward. Let's take off the horror mask. Let's put on our next mask. It is time for us to become stormtroopers, or Darth Vader, or Darth Revan. There are a whole host of people in this universe that wear masks. But it's now time for us to put on the Star Wars mask and talk about Star Wars. All right, to kick this segment off, we, of course, multiple choice question. And the question in the Star Wars segment is Andor the best thing Disney has ever released for Star Wars? Your options are, I'm not falling for that one. Yes. Oh,
Here's the problem with Restream. You can't label the images unless you put them as
you had it and then you changed it. It just, you almost got me. But okay, yes, absolutely. It's not even close. B, it's good but not the best. Or C, no, it was terrible. If I see any C's, you better explain yourself. And this is just me saying.
Really?
That.
Because I think if we
that.
rewind 2 months ago, you were in the C category.
If I stopped at episode 2 of season 1, I'd be in the C category for sure. But if you've only watched the first 2 episodes, C is an acceptable answer. So that's why I said you better explain it if you're a C. So A, B, C, yes, absolutely, it's not close. It's good, but not the best. Or C, no, it was terrible. And if you want to expound on that, do that. Tell us, why do you think it is this? Not just for C. but for A and B as well. All right, let's talk about it. Obviously, we've talked about it a lot on this channel over the last few months. It
Well,
has been
hang on. I'm going to throw down here on that question.
okay.
I have to.
Okay.
I think you've heard me say in many of our past discussions that I don't think just because you think something's the best in terms of quality that it's necessarily your favorite. I am very much struggling with what is my favorite piece of Star Wars content anymore between three of them. I'm very every night, and it seems to come up in my head as I'm getting ready to go to bed. Empire, Andor, Revenge of the Sith. Empire, Andor, Revenge of the Sith, and they keep bouncing around. But now that we've had time to sit on it, okay, it's been a while. I'm going to make this statement. Not only is Andor the best thing Disney has ever done with Star Wars, it is the best quality Star Wars media that has ever been released, period. And that includes The Empire Strikes Back. Is it my favorite? I don't know. I need more time. But in terms of quality, acting, sound design, score, storytelling, the depth of the story, the realism of it all, there has been nothing better than Andor ever. And I'll go one step further. It might be the best TV show ever made in terms of quality. Doesn't mean it needs to be the favorite. It also cost $650 million for 2 seasons, and that's never going to happen again. So, it just a tremendous amount of work, a great work by Tony Gilroy and company, and I do feel confident after this time saying that yeah, I do believe that Andor is not just the best thing Disney's done, but the best piece of Star Wars content we've ever gotten. I think when it's all said and done, it's probably going to come in under Empire for me. I just have so much love for Empire. But when you're evaluating a 2 hour and 10 minute film to a 20-hour series, which had maybe 3 or 4 bad episodes, and then 7 or 8 just insane episodes, and the rest still really good, it's hard to beat that, fellas. The more time you spend with characters, obviously, the more attached you become.
That's a take. I can't say I agree with it, but I can't argue it inherently, on its face. Um, but that's a hot take. I'll give you that all day long. Um, yeah. All right. Let's move back onto the script, back onto the plan. Not that was off, because it really wasn't at the end of it what we have in store here. But like we said, over the last couple months, we've been all Andor all the time. It's been an extreme topic of conversation between the Tuesday night shows and the Wednesday night review shows that we did over the course of the series, and the watch parties before that. And like I said, it's been a very big part of this channel for the last couple months. And outside of that, it has had a huge effect on Star Wars itself as a fandom from top to bottom, including in ways that if you'd have told me, 2 months ago that this would be something that happened as a direct result of Andor season 2, I would have said you're full of shit. That's what are you smoking? And of course, I'm talking about the thing that happened over the past week, and that is the Battlefront 2 numbers. That people have been flocking to that game in droves. As a direct result of Andor. We'll talk more about that in depth, tonight and over the course. I'm sure again in the future it will be a topic of conversation. But outside of that, you've seen the streaming numbers come in. It's even had an effect on content over on Audible. It's the impact of Andor season 2 has been astronomical compared to what we expected even as little as a month ago. You want to walk us through some of those things, Sean, that have been going on in the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, as a direct result of this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to you need to paint a little bit of a picture. I loved Andor season 1, so I had really high expectations for season 2. But even season 2 blew my expectations out of the water in terms of what we actually got. Um, when Battlefront 2's player numbers soar up the highest they've been in over half a decade, and not just by a little, a substantial amount, at the same time Andor's airing, and when Rogue One becomes the most viewed movie on Disney Plus in that time, when Andor's airing, and when Catalyst, the prequel to Rogue One, the novel, becomes the most downloaded Star Wars novel in the last 3 months on Audible. These aren't coincidences, people. This is proof that Andor, pardon the wrestling term here, was a massive needle mover in ways that I didn't think they'd expect. And now we have further numbers. Andor, this is as of yesterday, the second week's ratings, okay, did better than The Last of Us penultimate episode. And I know The Last of Us is, kind of. I've not watched, so I can't comment on the quality, but I've seen a lot of hate towards it for various reasons. I've seen a lot of go woke, go broke nonsense. I can't comment on it. I haven't seen it, but the numbers are great, and we'll get numbers on the third week, which is the week that I think a lot of us are really looking at because of the Gorman massacre, because of Mothma's escape. Those numbers will come out next week. It's been incredible to see, and like I've continued to play a lot more Battlefront with my little guy. We're just playing like privately offline, but it's been fun, and it's made me want to play Battlefront with the two of you, and get squatted up and have some fun with it. Um, there is no doubt that the impact that Andor has had has it in terms of cultural impact, in terms of impact for Lucasfilm and Disney. It's the biggest impact that there's been since The Force Awakens. Um, and also, the thing is still sitting at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. It also is the first TV series ever to have five 9.5 or higher episodes in a row. Not just Star Wars, any series ever on IMDb. Um, just a absolute wild turn of events. I didn't even see this coming. What about you, Randy?
Well, obviously, I did have high expectations for season 2 just because season 1 was great to begin with, and obviously I have even more appreciation for it after we did our rewatch. But the fact that it's had this huge of an impact, Rogue One, I got like the fact that it's streamed as much as it has been because of Andor makes complete and total sense. Battlefront 2 numbers blew me away. The book on Audible makes sense. But the quality of what we saw, especially in like the back half of season 2, where everything came together and all the emotions were just running high from all of that. And the storytelling was just beautiful and poignant and hit on a lot of things that, you know, most people don't think about nowadays, but some of the stuff was pretty relevant for what's going on. It's just ultimately, I'm not shocked about the quality. I'm not shocked about how well everything graded out based on what we saw. I'm just surprised that certain medias were more so than anything. Like I said, Battlefront 2 just blew me away. And the fact that the guy who played Willman was all like, yeah, we need Battlefront 3. Like he's right up there talking about how, EA should get off their ass and make that third game. I'm all for it as long as they don't screw it up. We don't need any loot box issues like we had with Battlefront 2 when that first launched. But still, this is proof positive that we finally got a Star Wars, property that grew up with us. It actually grew up with us. We actually got something that's not kiddie. This proves that you can make great content that doesn't have to be directed at the kids. That it can be directed at the adults that grew up watching Star Wars as a kid. And I'm here for it. I want more of this. Like I said, let's get a Luthen series. Let's see what let's see what happened with Kreia. Let's see what happens with Kreia and the rest of everybody else in between Rogue One and A New Hope if we have to. I mean, I'm all for more type of content like this. Obviously, we know we might not get the same type of quality because not everybody's going to be Mr. Gilroy there, but it doesn't mean we can't build off of what we have. I think there's a real opportunity here to continue to make solid Star Wars content like this and to continue to have these types of successes. It's a shame that a lot of the Disney Plus stuff has suffered from, just episode length and trying to be super woke, and because of all that backlash, because of that, production value, things of that nature, that this should be the blueprint. Andor should be the blueprint moving forward, and I really hope that this is something that Disney really takes notice of and gives us more of this, because honestly, if they go back to what we've gotten in the past, it's going to be like just a swift kick in the nuts to the fans for just saying, look, this is what you hate, this is what we can do for you, now we're just going to take it away. That's kind of the impact I look at as, this is the blueprint. This is what we need. You can still make kiddie stuff. You can still make stuff for the kids. You can still make stuff for teens. But the meat and potatoes of your fan base that grew up with Star Wars, we need stuff like this. And I think this is kind of something we need to have more of.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is so much that we didn't expect to happen coming out of this that has happened out of this. I think, personally, in my opinion, I think a lot of it is fresh, a new interest, and there's so much to this that it goes beyond what we expected. Like Randy, like you mentioned, Rogue One. That's an obvious thing. That makes perfect sense because a lot of people were going to finish season 2, which directly knocks into Rogue One, and go right to watching it. A lot of people did that. We took a week, came back, and did a watch party here on the channel. And I'm sure we weren't. Obviously we weren't the only ones who did things like that. Not necessarily watch parties, but just finishing the series and then going right into the movie. So yes, it was bound to have a knock-on effect in viewership. I think the Battlefront 2 one is, and you'll have to forgive me, but I think it's a tempest in a teapot. People are making this big deal about, oh my god, the spike in numbers. That's great. EA don't care. People are using this as a rally cry to make a third game. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Because at any given time, there will always be one game on Steam that jumps its numbers after a long period of time. Because something will happen. Somebody famous will say something about a game, whether they're in the gaming universe or in a fandom universe, about a game, and it'll spike their numbers. In this case, it was Will. It was the guy who plays Will's comments leading to a spike in a player count for a game that has been dead for 5 years. That's great. It's still very minuscule numbers. Let me see if I can pull up the numbers really quickly right now. For it, the last 30 days, this is from the Steam charts, which is the main source we have for the player count. The average player number is only 6,891. That's it. That's not going to interest you.
That's not accurate, though. That's not taken.
That's the average number. That's the average number. I specifically said this is the Steam numbers.
Okay,
which is the only readily available player count numbers.
Well, someone else is coming up from them, coming up with it somehow, because I've seen other reputable channels like John Campia, who doesn't just throw shit out for the sake of throwing shit out. You're talking numbers in this 6 digits worth of players. This past weekend, there was over 100,000 people playing at the same time. So, I'm always wary about whenever someone tries, and I'm not saying Johnny's doing this, debunk something for the sake of debunking it. The player count has been way up. They don't just put that out there for the sake of putting it out there. Now, what I do agree with is you're not getting Battlefront 3. I'm sorry. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news in that. I'm not saying Battlefront 3, the game, will never happen at some point in time, or another Star Wars shooter like that, online game like that, won't happen. But EA doesn't have exclusive rights anymore, which means they're going to pay just for the right to make that game now. And that's not going to happen. By the sounds of it, there's a real possibility the third Jedi game might be canceled with how things are going. So I know morale's down. They lost a bunch of staff. As much as we love Andor, and it also, I don't want to, let's not give the guy who plays Wilmot too much credit. The player numbers went way up before he ever even mentioned that. And why? Because Andor was making people want to play Star Wars. Well, if you want to play Star Wars with other people, fellas, can you tell me another game that you can play right now? Like, I think the Switch game got discontinued. I don't remember what the name of that thing was. It's like a battle royal thing.
I think it was Hunters.
You can play Jedi Academy, I believe, if you have it on Switch or PC. But in terms of modern day, good graphics, stuff like that, I, in terms of being like, stormtroopers, rebels, etc., I don't think there is another option to play right now. So that's another reason why they're flocking to it, because it is the only option right now um, to play. But I'm with Johnny in regards to it's not going to get the third game made. The EA Lucasfilm relationship is not where it was. And when did this game come out? 2017, I want to say, the end of 2017. By the way, it still looks fantastic for a game that was released that long ago. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to make Battlefront 3 get made. Not by EA, anyway.
Nope. It's just, it's like I said, it's a knock-on effect. People are seeing these big numbers pop that are like, oh, well, the interest is there. Well, no, the interest's not there. Because even if you hit 100,000 people playing concurrently in the last, 2 weeks compared to where it was, for a game that's almost 10 years old, that's dropping the bucket numbers for somebody like EA. Now, if that number had hit 500,000, then somebody's somewhere's taking notice, being like, wait a minute, 500,000 people are picking up this game from 10 years ago and playing it for the first time. Maybe there is something here. But it's not. It's if the numbers
not to
are
mention,
sustained.
you wouldn't see, if you wanted the game done properly, this thing's years away if they started
Oh
on it
yeah.
even months from now. So, like, it is what it is, unfortunately.
If they can sustain 6-digit playership over the course of the next few months, then yeah, somebody's going to take notice. But it's too little, too late, guys. Your window of opportunity passed. If you wanted a Battlefront 3, you should have been playing Battlefront 2 10 years ago.
Nah, I don't blame them for that, though. No, that's not their fault. That's fucking EA and what Randy mentioned. Like, we were there when it launched, dude. We all
Yeah,
were.
but they didn't come back from when the changes happened.
And,
Like,
well,
if your
hey, I
problem
wouldn't
was,
have either. Guess what? You know who else didn't? This guy. They lost me, and 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 they should have lost everybody. They kind of did, and they deserved it. They got what they fucking deserved, as Joker says at the end of Joker. You get what you fucking deserve, and that's what they deserved. I look at the numbers as something. Who cares about Battlefront 3? We're all Star Wars fans here. You know what all these numbers mean? Andor reinvigorated interest in Star Wars, and that's what matters.
absolutely it did. And we'll get to see more of that in the future. All right, what's the next one? All right, we know the Andor we got, but what about the Andor we didn't get? We know that Tony Gilroy has said a lot of things in the last little bit about when he started, he did things as chaotically as he could just to try and make them cancel him. Opening the series in a brothel just to try and get them to cancel him. Doing some of the things he did in that first few episodes of the first season, just to try and see just how far he could push the envelope. Now, obviously, they let him go a lot further than any of us would have expected. Let's be honest. Not just with the brothel, but with the way they told the story and the storytelling and all of the things that went on within it, and painting the rebels in the way that they did. All of the things that we didn't expect them to do that they did. What was left out? What was left on? I don't want to say the cutting room floor, because that is stuff that was shot that wasn't filmed, but what stuff didn't get out of the writer's room? What stuff didn't get out of Tony Gilroy's head that he wanted in his original plans for Andor? You're muted.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him that. That's not really where I was going with this. I was going with what Disney wanted him to do, and what Lucasfilm wanted him to do. They approached him. This is what I'm talking about, like with the Trankus and Halloween stuff. Tony Gilroy didn't conceptualize Andor. That credit just goes to Lucasfilm. However, they conceived the series as a Andor and Cassian and K2 buddy series where they'd go around going on missions that would eventually lead up to Rogue One. And but they also wanted the political side of things with Mon Mothma. So that's what intrigued Tony Gilroy. He's seen, oh, okay, so we're going to touch on that, and you want to do Gorman and all that stuff. The problem was Tony's like, there's a reason we benched K2 in parts of Rogue One. It's the Goku effect if you're an anime fan. It's the guy that comes in and fucking cleans house, and where's the interest in that? Don't get me wrong, Alan Tudyk is a fucking gem. Like anytime that guy's on screen, whether it's K2 or someone else, just absolutely brilliant. But having K2 be involved in as little as Andor as they could was the right call. And even when he was involved, you guys might remember the very first mission they go on, they bench him. Obviously, he leaves the bench, like in Rogue One, but he said there was just a massive flaw in the series, and it to him it came across more like they were trying to do the Avengers going for the Tesseract thing. And he's like, and it kind of upset him because I don't want to tip my hand too much on what really happened with Rogue One, because I'm going to do a video on it that's going to come out on the channel here in the next couple weeks. But let's just say Gareth Edwards gets a lot of credit for Rogue One that he probably should not get, and we're going to talk about that. And to a point, Tony Gilroy's not even really comfortable talking about it because he doesn't want to throw other people under the bus unnecessarily, other than he was hired to be the doctor to come in and fix things for Rogue One, and so he feels like a sense of ownership over it to an extent. And he's like, I watched an interview. He's like, oh wait, maybe not ownership. That's not accurate. It's not my IP, but rentership, if you will. And so when they pitched him that, he's like, you got a few good ideas here, but, and he wrote, and this is his words, a manifesto. And if you listen to our new intro, obviously we have Nemec's manifesto there, the Mask of Fear, come up at the end of the intro. It's also one of the things that led to one of many things that led to the title of the show, and the rebrand of the channel. And he wrote Kathleen Kennedy a manifesto being like, if you're going to do this show, if you're insistent on it, and they weren't, by the way, approaching Tony to make it, they were approaching Tony, what do you think of this, and should we make it? And Tony ends up writing them this big manifesto of, if you're going to do it, this is how you do it. And if you're not going to do it this way, don't do it because you're going to hurt Rogue One. And then that led Lucasfilm and Disney to being like, okay, sure, we'll do it if you're going to do it. And and it suckered Tony back in, as did a big payday, obviously, as well. But yeah, it was going to be basically one of those buddy cop TV shows, and would have been much different tone than what we ended up getting. And Randy made the point earlier when I was in the washroom. I could hear him from the washroom. Hearing Randy from the washroom, the highlight of my night. Uh, um, he mentioned that not all Star Wars needs to be for adults, and not all Star Wars series needs to be the same. And I agree with that. I do, and we're going to talk a little bit about that with our next topic. But um, why should you abandon the adults? They were Star Wars fans as kids. Just because someone gets older doesn't mean you should no longer make things for them. You have various demographics to serve, and now with the results of Andor, I think they'll be driven to do something else, more in line with adults, while still doing their kid and teen like content. But yeah, let's thank Tony Gilroy, because this was almost something very different.
Um, thank God for that. All right, let's move to the next topic. We've obviously seen the success of Andor, not just in of itself, but in its effect in Star Wars as a fandom. Like we said, it has definitely relit the flames of passion in a lot of people, myself included. Who went into the series initially with "don't want this, don't care about this, I'll pass on this," to "damn, this was actually really good. This told a story that I didn't know needed to be told." So coming out of what I went into a don't need this story turned out to be I'm glad we got this story, and it was a story that needed to be told. I'll still say that it should not have ever been named Andor, but in the Disney era, apparently naming a series after the most bankable star is what you do. So I'll just blame them for that, I guess. But I digress, because that brings us into our next topic, and that is, now that we are out of Andor, the light now shines on the next big thing on the agenda. Now, obviously, we have season 2 of Ahsoka going into production, but the big spotlight, the big focus now shines on the still horribly named Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, how much does the success of Andor, how much additional stress does the success of Andor put uh, on Feige and Favreau? Why did I say Feige? The F threw me there, on Filoni and Favreau heading into the Mandalorian and Grogu. Randy?
I mean, there's always going to be pressure regardless because it's Star Wars. And let's be honest, a good chunk of the fandom is extremely toxic, regardless of what gets put out there. It could be Andor, and there's going to be some people who are just like, it's too this, it's too that. With the Mandalorian Grogu, obviously you have your Mandalorian fans who are like, so we're not getting season 4. Sorry, no, you're not. But you are going to get a movie made by Dave Filoni, which, I mean, I'm all for. Obviously, Filoni's been very successful with Clone Wars, Rebels, Ahsoka, and even directing and writing some of the episodes of The Mandalorian through the 3 seasons. So we know that he's capable of crafting us a really good story here. Obviously, since this is going to be the first movie we've seen in a long time, this is definitely going to be pushed out towards kids, teens, and adults because the Grogu effect, of course. But ultimately, I feel like the pressure is going to be on making sure that the quality is there, so that not only are you putting out a good product, because this is clearly going to be leading into more TV series, more movies that are all going to interconnect. And what we're going to need here is just a really solid outing. We don't need to have $1 billion, $2 billion, movie here, but we need at least a good return on profit and ultimately just helping the franchise move forward and continue what we got with Andor. Now, granted, majority of I think the movie had already been filmed, so I don't know if they've done reshoots or doing reshoots yet, but I know for a fact that since the Andor was so huge, I can almost guarantee you that the team is feeling pressure to ensure that whatever comes out in theaters ends up being high quality, looks great, sounds great, tight story. Uh, I'm going to assume they're going to go back and do some reshoots to kind of try to tighten some things up, just so that they still get to tell their story, but ultimately it ends up adding to the movie versus taking away, which we know sometimes reshoots can do. But yeah, it's kind of hard to not feel like they're going to have to feel the pressure of Andor being such a huge success. It's really, I would be so shocked if they're sitting back there just chilling, going, no, we're good. Because I'm going to tell you this: if this fails, what's going to happen with the other movies? Because that's right now, that's the big thing. Star Wars has always been a theater product. It's only was Andor that really brought that type of gravitas to where it's like Star Wars can work on the small screen. It's not just the animation that can work. We can get solid live action product that is going to resonate with people. Now, don't get me wrong, we had other decent product with Ahsoka, and to some extent we had some great moments in Obi-Wan. We had some good moments in the Acolyte. Even Skeleton Crew had great moments, but as a whole, Andor stands tall above all of them. So now we need the movies to kind of not emulate Andor, but to at least give that type of quality, and that is a lot to live up to.
Sean?
What was it Wade Barrett used to say, Johnny? What was his gimmick quote?
Which one?
You talking about Bad News Barrett?
Yeah. What was that quote again? Give it to me, Johnny.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. That was a horrible British accent, but it'll have to do.
I think the Mandalorian Grogu will do not great, but well financially. I don't think it'll flop. I don't think it'll lose money. I think it'll make money. I don't think you're looking at a solo situation. They might do some reshoots. I don't know if that's in the cards. Here's the problem, and everyone needs to have realistic expectations about this. The Mandalorian and Grogu. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni didn't sit down and write that going, we are going to make a movie. That's problem number one. The Mandalorian and Grogu is a condensed story of what season 4 was going to be. And Bob Iger came back in and said, yeah, we need a movie. It's been a long time. And didn't ask, told them, you're not doing season 4. You need to do a movie. Automatically by design right there. And I'm sorry, it begins in the writer's room. It begins with how many drafts. Like, you can tell when you watch something like Andor how many different revisions are happening with the writing, and then you watch something like Kenobi, and this is coming from one of the biggest Obi-Wan fans on planet Earth, and how fucking surface level it was, or how surface level the Mando season 3 is. The budget also matters. I'm sorry, it just does. They did some location shooting for the Mandalorian and Grogu, thank fuck, but it's also them again. They're going to lean on some stagecraft, not as much, and I think it can still be a useful tool while used in the right way. But there's a bunch of the movie that's shot on the backlot again in California, and So when we're talking backlog in California, the best example I can give you of that, guys, is if you go back to Kenobi and that first time Obi-Wan and Vader meet in that little village, where it's just one long row, and then the same three sand pits that they try to make look different, and Obi-Wan just runs around in a circle around them to get around Vader, which just looked fucking terrible. There was no way to mask that. Is the backlot. You are limiting yourself when you do that. And if that's half the movie, then hopefully the other half of the movie is damn fucking good. $120 million budget. I'm not saying you can't make a great looking blockbuster movie for that, but it's hard. It's very hard. And again, I think this movie is going to do well financially, which is probably all Disney cares about. But when people look at this movie critically and fan reception, Andor is going to fucking kill it. And the quality control is just not going to be there. And I hope I'm wrong. I'd love nothing more to eat some crow a year from now while we're talking about this. But I think you're going to leave there going, wow, one looked insane and the other one looked barely passable. I'm much more confident in Sean Levy's Starfighter movie in terms of being able to tell a good story, in terms of script revision, in terms of having a strong lead. Because remember, Pedro Pascal is basically just a voice actor. He was on set we covered this in one of our past shows last year, 2 weeks essentially at the very beginning, and they had to get his part done like 2 months before filming actually begun. So we're going to see very little of actually him, and it's going to be a lot of I always forget his first name, but John Wayne's grandson in the suit. Not to say he doesn't do a good job, but like there's a big difference between having that and having Ryan Gosling, the star of the film, go out and market everywhere and his face be plastered everywhere. And like Sean Levy's coming off of Deadpool and Wolverine, fellas. So like you want to talk about coming off something hot. That's coming off something hot. And Levy showed that he could make the movie still look half decent while being very limited in terms of where they shot the thing. So again, I think Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be fun for kids. I think there's some aspects of the movie that we're going to like, but when it comes to quality control and storytelling, it's going to be a far cry from Andor. And I do think Andor's success and the quality that they brought does hurt a project like that and will hurt a project like that. And I liked Randy's point in terms of, it set a new bar. That doesn't mean you have to have the tone of Andor. Not everything needs to be adult. You can still have stuff that's kid friendly, but being done in a high Christopher Nolan level quality. Think The Dark Knight. Think Batman Begins. Right, like that stuff is possible to do, but Mando and Grogu, I wouldn't be shocked if that movie gets cut down, and if there are reshoots, I don't know what's going to come because all those guys are very busy. Dave Filoni's currently shooting Ahsoka as we speak, right? So like to get him to go get Favreau, who's busy with other projects too, it's going to be very very hard. So the goal here might be I know people are used to 2 hour plus Star Wars movies because that's all we've ever gotten. But if you need to cut that movie down to like an hour and 40 to make it tighter, make it flow better, pace better, then you need to be willing to do that this time around. They never ever should have taken a season of TV and turned it into a movie. They should have started from scratch and wrote a movie. And regardless of what they come out and tell you, when you got the Making Star Wars, the Bespin Bulletin, the Jeff Snyders of the world all telling you that that's what happened, believe me, that's what happened.
I think that to say that the pressure, the Mandalorian Grogu is affected by the pressure. I think the only pressure they're affected with this is critical pressure. Um, I think the financial pressure, I don't think it's there because I think no matter what you do, the profit margins, assuming this doesn't, Rogue One Solo fall on its face financially, and not turn a profit. I think as long as this film turns a profit, it's already financially more successful than Andor, because even with the additional numbers, it's still more in the pocket of Disney than the subscription numbers they would have gotten from Andor right off the bat. So I think financially, obviously, it's much like the only way it can fail to be better financially is to not make a profit. And of course, there's always creative bookkeeping to even make that not an issue. So
Well,
they
let's
may
not
actually
forget.
welcome that from a tax standpoint.
Let's not forget they came. Who was it? It was either Variety or the Hollywood Reporter. One of those main trades came out and said Andor had driven more subscribers to Disney Plus than any show since launch. How they come up with that number, I have no fucking idea. It doesn't make sense to me. But um, yeah, it's gonna make money. But I think there's people that go, "Oh, it's an automatic billion."
No,
I don't think so, guys. If they hit it, great. But I think it'll be significantly less than that.
I think it has to be a critical storytelling success for it to hit $1 billion. It needs to, in order to hit $1 billion, it needs to, it needs to tap the fanboy market into going to see it 3 and 4 times to cross that $1 billion threshold. If it can't do that, it has zero chance of doing that. And you can see that with superhero movies, in the Marvel universe. If they don't go back to see it multiple times like they do for Avengers movies or successful non-Avenger movies, they're not going to get anywhere close to sniffing that $1 billion mark. So
I think they're going to end up around 6. Honestly, I think that 650, maybe 7, and with what the budget is and marketing hasn't even begun, and there's a good bet they're going to at least double the budget on marketing, and then the theaters get their cut too. 6 or 7 would be very successful. I know some people won't think so because they're so used to Star Wars hitting $1 billion. By the way, Rogue One was. Am I echoing here, fellas?
Not really.
Sorry, I thought I was. Rogue One was wildly successful financially. It was Solo that was not.
Yeah,
Rogue
Rogue One passed the billion mark, and Solo only hit like not even 500 million.
Yeah, they lost.
I was going to say 500,000. Damn, Randy. What numbers?
Okay, yeah.
That might be Star Wars is dead at that point. But
I corrected myself.
At that point, Waterworld made more profit than you. You should maybe retire from filmmaking, period.
Randy
it didn't even hit 400 million, actually. Solo didn't.
No, it didn't. It lost a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
Randy brought up toxicity earlier. There's going to be people that go, "Oh, it didn't hit $1 billion. It's a complete failure financially." But the truth is,
shut up.
It'll probably need to make about 4 to 450 to break even. So if that movie makes 6 or 7, Disney's going to be laughing. Anything more, I think Johnny hit the nail on the head. You're going to have a well-written, well-told story. And I'm sorry, I don't even know what the story of this. Well, we do. We know it has slipped out. The whole the Hutt kids involved again from the
Jeremy Allen White now playing.
Yeah, it's the same Hutt from the Clone Wars movie.
His job is kid.
But yeah,
Rhoda. Rhoda. Is that another?
Breezy, we mentioned this earlier. I see it. Some comments were skipped, but I understand why. Yeah, this is not time to read all the comments, man. And to be fair, the one that you thought we skipped earlier, we read. You must not have been here for. But again, if you want your comment guaranteed to be read on air, send in a super chat.
If the topic is on topic of what we're actively talking about in that moment, it is more likely to be read in that moment. Otherwise, we'll get to it between topics if we're good on time. We're already pushing close to 2 hours, and we still got an entire segment left. So there's going to be stuff left behind.
It's a short segment, though.
If you want, like we said, if you want to be guaranteed to get your comment featured and talked about, send it as a super chat. Otherwise, we'll get to it if we can, when we can. And if we don't, sorry, but that's the nature of live entertainment.
I'll answer this one quickly, and you guys can have your 2 cents. We'll start with the misinformation here. Palpatine's not even in Andor, physically speaking. But is he the devil of the series? I think that is accurate. I think he is, wait for it, the Phantom Menace of Andor. So,
it's the Phantom Menace period. As evidenced by our discussion of that before.
He doesn't appear, but his DNA is all over it. Make no mistake about it. That and Rogue One, really. And who wins between Vader and Maul? As much as I
Is that
like
even a
Maul,
question?
it's Vader. Old man Kenobi kills Maul at that point, so it's hard to imagine, Vader not doing it. So I go Vader, and again, yeah, Palpatine is the devil of the series, but he does not appear.
Yep. All right. As we come to our last topic here, it has become spoken more prevalent. It's sort of been, I don't want to say speculated for a long time, but it has now been confirmed by the man himself. I believe he did it on, I don't know if it was in an interview or on X or which platform, but Mark Hamill himself has come out and says, I'm done. I'm done with Star Wars, and let I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, let the young people have their time, something to that effect. But is this a missed opportunity? Is this something that should have been capitalized in some form to try and get Mark more involved in the twilight of his career as someone part of Star Wars? Over the last 7-8 years, since we finished 9. Is this a missed opportunity? Should Star Wars have tried to do more with Mark before he reached the point of being done with this?
Randy, I'll be short, and then I'll let you take over.
All right.
Yeah, it's a fucking missed opportunity. Okay, leave live action out of this for a second. We were sorry, Randy. I know you like Bad Batch, but fuck Bad Batch, right? Fuck Resistance. Fuck your little Tales of series. You have arguably one of the greatest voice actors on planet fucking Earth sitting right there, who you suck the passion out of, not the fans. Disney and Lucasfilm sucked the passion out of. You're telling me that people didn't want to see a Luke Skywalker series set between fucking even say post Mandalorian, say his sort of appearance at the end of Mando season 2, and when he disappears 6 or 7 years before the Force Awakens? You tell me there's not time to do a unique, interesting 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 season? We're getting a fucking another Darth Maul goddamn show, pardon my language, but you can't give me a fucking Luke Skywalker show that would reinvigorate Star Wars again? No, this is the problem. This is why, as much as you want to give Kathleen Kennedy credit for going to bat for Andor, and she deserves it, this is another reason why she deserves to also be removed from the position. This was an easy fucking slam dunk that this guy would have done, and depending on who takes that job next, maybe, cross your fingers, still might do, because he's still at an age where you could do a series that leads to him going into hiding, and he could still voice the role. Live action, yeah, he's probably never appearing again. Much to the displeasure of the people writing the Ray movie. That'll probably never happen. Um, like, this is an easy fucking slam dunk. You do not need to be a fucking rocket scientist, and they fucking blew it. Sorry.
Do you feel better now? Do you need your binky? Are we good?
For every Andor, there's a stupid decision. For every Andor, there's 5 dumb decisions like this one.
Randy, what are your thoughts on this topic?
First of all, I love how he pretty much did his exit. He's like, look, that's me disappeared and I left the rose behind. I am not going to film another scene naked. So it's like, he's just, I think I'm as much as it disappoints me, it is a huge missed opportunity, but I think this is also just a sign that it's time to recast. I mean, yes, we're going to go, obviously recast your time of live action, which is fine. Obviously animated, you're right. There was a huge missed opportunity, but just because we're getting a Maul series, it's Sam Witwer at least. It's not like they're moving on from someone else. But it's just, I feel like we've talked about this. We've talked about how you could have easily had the original 3 doing some animated stuff, lending some voice acting. Plus, we know that there's some very talented voice actors out there who sound very similarly to to the actual characters. I mean, think about what Troy Baker did for Indiana Jones and how much Harrison Ford was like, hey, give this kid some kudos. He's pulled it off beautifully. You could use him as Han in an animated series. Like it, I just
Hang
feel
on,
like it.
hang on. I'm pulling my binky back out for a second, dude.
Oh
Uh,
Christ!
there's a difference. Harrison Ford's not a voice actor. Mark Hamill is one of the greatest fucking voice actors on planet Earth.
I get that point, but what I'm also saying is it's an opportunity. It's a missed opportunity, right? You could have had, even if Harrison Ford didn't want to do it, you could have had like someone like Troy Baker and Mark Hamill and who I can't remember who voiced Leia in like Rebels and all that, because she did a really great job. But it's the idea here that they definitely they sucked the passion out of Mark Hamill, and I don't blame him for wanting to move on from the role. He's talked about recasting the role ever since they were making new movies and having new projects. And honestly, I don't see why they didn't do it. Well, I mean, we all know why they really didn't do it. It's the Holy Trinity. Can't do that. We're too scared what'll happen. It sucks.
They still think the reason they recast Han the reason they lost money on Solo is because they recast Han, and that's not it at all.
No, it's not. Alden Ehrenreich did a great job, I thought. But ultimately here, it's his decision. I don't blame him for doing it. I wish we'd gotten more out of him, that at least, like you said, in an animated sense, because why not? Luke Skywalker voicing Luke Skywalker. Let's go. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. But now we just got to settle for whatever comes, and that's on them. As a fan, I will accept whatever they. I mean, I won't be happy about it, but I'll accept whatever they do. I just really hope that this is a call to say, hey, we need to really think about the stories we still have yet to tell of the big three, and it's time to kind of look at different actors to come in and reprise the role. We don't need any more deep fakes with Luke. It's time to bring in a new face so that people can get used to it. And it's a shame that it had to come to this. It's a shame that it's to the point now where Mark Hamill's like, I'm done. And now it's like, unless he signed over his likeness to Lucasfilm, which, similar to like what James Earl Jones did with his voice, I don't see how they're going to be, willing to talk about any more, any more Luke Skywalker stories. And that kind of sucks if that ends up being the case, because he is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. So
just to be clear, Troy Baker could probably voice Luke Skywalker too.
Probably. He could probably sit there and take up that entire room. He's like, I'm going to do 5 characters, watch it, like similar to what Seth MacFarlane does on Family Guy. So I wouldn't shock me.
Dude's brilliant.
Absolutely.
There's no two ways about it. They shit the bed in a big way. Prior to, I would argue, episode 8 is what really did it. As far as Mark being like, you know what? Fuck that, I'm done. Because, as he said many times, he didn't like the story. He didn't like what they did to Luke's character. He didn't like anything about it, and it had an effect. I think that had they sort of given Mark, I don't want to say his own platform, because that's a little much, but, had they let him, be a producer on a, an animated series about Luke's adventures, in between 6 and 7, whether you wait until after Mandalorian, do it post that, or even pre that, there are stories to be told. They dabbled that a little bit in Battlefront 2. In the story mode, you see Luke venturing around trying to find, Sith artifacts and things of that. You could have done an entire series based around that premise, just Luke adventuring and finding, all these different Sith objects that Palpatine had secreted away and used like that. You could have built an entire series on that premise, and it would have been great, I think. And you could have had Mark come back for that, not even necessarily as a producer, just as a talent. And if you wanted to produce it, let him do it. Like it's not a difficult thing to do. Mark always, until this point, Mark has always been very pro Star Wars, because he knows that it's, his success is built on that. He knows that. He's embraced it. More than a lot, more than really, I'd argue, really anyone else in fandom. Has he embraced the fan base as much as he has? Doing some of the things he's done. You hear the stories about, things Mark does, with like Make a Wish and things like that, and you hear those stories, and it's like you know that you of all the people in Star Wars, Mark is the most next door neighbor, of all of the characters. And that speaks great to him. Like Carrie, she had her affection for Star Wars, but it wasn't so much the same. She was kind of over it eventually, and she just wanted to live life. Good on her, she on that. And Harrison was, I'm just gonna cash the paycheck and move on. Good for him. He has the success to do that. And he became one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood for a long period of time. He, he doesn't need Star Wars. Star Wars needs him. But Mark never turned his back on it. He never turned his back on Star Wars. Even if you look at like his cameo in The Simpsons, and was that 92, 93? When he did that episode where they did the Simpsons musical, or where they did the Star Wars musical, like
Such a great episode.
Mark never turned his back on the fan base in such a way that he always embraced, and he still does. Even on Twitter, he is, liked and commented on the most things about any major actor I've really ever seen. As far as interacting with the fan base through social media. So, I like to think that's him and not an assistant or something. But at the end of the day, it's still Mark, and not doing something with him is just, it's a waste. Like you said, John, you mentioned his resume. This guy is one of the best voice actors out in history. Like he took a character that no one thought could be that, and made him the Joker for a generation. He took a character and made it his own. It's ridiculous that they couldn't have found something to use those talents on. You mentioned, they did all these things like, Bad Batch, yeah, it was garbage. Resistance, not for us. Tales of, gee, if only there was a character who could have had an entire Tales of series based solely on his actions, that could have been voiced by someone with a serious. Oh, wait, no, hold on, no, wait, what? Why doesn't Mark have his own Tales of series? Like, why wasn't that the first or second thing you could have, like, come on, there's no excuse for it. It's inexcusable. It's a missed opportunity, and for him to now be done with it is just, it's sad. It's a waste. And you have to, if you want to salvage anything of the golden trio in Star Wars, you have to recast them. You have to. You can't sit on it. You can't not do it. You have to.
Yeah,
You
I'm okay
absolutely
with the
has to.
recast, and I'm not talking like the doing what they did for the one episode of Book of Boba Fett or the end of the Mando season 2. It needs to be a just traditional recast, and I think we're past the point for Sebastian Stan. To be honest, I've seen someone else mention that. Um, but one of the biggest mistakes they made was letting Ryan Johnson do a Skywalker saga movie. I think Ryan Johnson could make an excellent Star Wars movie. The dude's a brilliant director, good writer too. Um, but he wanted to do things his way, and it was going to be his way or the highway. Well, sometimes you have to have respect for the people you work with. Not to say he didn't or doesn't now, but take a look at what Tony Gilroy did with Skarsgård. Stellan's the father, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So um, he had mentioned he didn't want his backstory just to be one specific thing. He had a certain way he wanted to go about it. Obviously, that comes out in episode 10 of season 2 of Andor. But like Gilroy worked with him to find a fit. And this is a guy that had only done one season for a character that before that season we'd never even heard of. You're telling me that Mark Hamill wasn't due a little more respect than what he got? No. Lucasfilm has earned this response from Mark Hamill, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
You're 100% right.
Nothing more to add there. All right, guys. That's going to do it for all of our main talking points here on Star Wars. But as we finished the last segment, Sean, you have some questions for the audience. It is a good idea to not be muted.
I said I jumped the gun with the graphics. All right. If you want more on screen Luke Skywalker stories of any sort, whether it's Mark Hamill playing the role or Randy or anyone else, please put a 1 in the chat now. Or if you're okay with never seeing Luke Skywalker on screen again, put a 2 in the chat. Do you want more Luke Skywalker on screen, whether it's live action or animated? Or are you fine with retiring the character? Put a 2 on screen. Please do it now for some fun little fan engagement that helps out the stream with activity. A 1 for more Luke Skywalker, and a 2 for it's okay to retire him. I'm a hard 1 on this one, fellas. No doubt in my mind. As long as the sequel trilogy remains canon, and I don't see why it wouldn't, even though I don't particularly like it. You know, you got 30 years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. You get the Rise of the First Order. Luke's gone 6 or 7 years before The Force Awakens. That means you got, and then if you look at where there was Mando now, about 6 years after Return of the Jedi, that's still like 17 years, fellas. And we only got one real canon book that takes place. By the way, it's a knockout one with Shadows of the Sith, a Luke and Lando story, and actually a Kid Rey story too, that answers questions about Rey's parents. A must read for anybody that's a fan of Luke, in my opinion. But like, there's just too much there. There's too much meat on the bone there to do nothing with. Give me more Luke Skywalker for sure. Hard 1. And just 1 Star Wars question, not 2.
All right, there you go. All right, guys. We can take off our Stormtrooper helmets, remove the Revan masks. And now it is time for us to channel our inner luchador and enter the squared circle. It's time for us to talk wrestling. And to start us off, as always, it is time for a multiple choice question. Leave your answer in the comments down below. Who will be the first member out of Evo Shield? That's what I'm calling it. Until they give us a real name, it's Evo Shield. Dangerous. You can't be the Dangerous Alliance. You're not Poly Dangerously anymore. You're Evo Shield, because that's just what you are. Is it A, Seth
That
Rollins?
is the word. You are more creative than that to come up with something so dog shit, dude. Come on.
I'm sorry.
There's
I'm
never
trying
been-
to apply for the company's creative team. They don't like creativity, so I just went for generic. If it works for them, it can work for me. All right. Is it A, Seth Rollins, B, Braun Breaker, or C, Bronson Reed? Who is the first person to be kicked out of the, if they don't soon give us a name, I'm going to start coming up with even cheesier names than Evo Shield group? All right, guys. It's time for the first question, first topic. Right now, obviously, if you watch both shows, we're not just here to talk WWE, we're here to talk all things pro wrestling. So we're going to start with an AEW topic. Right now, the trio, there is a trio being built over in AEW, and it is this one right here. It is Hangman, Will Ospreay, and why didn't you put the names in order so that their name would be on their body? Because you got Ospreay on Ospreay, and then Swerve and Hangman are.
Well, you see, man, I've only had a mountain of work to do. If you wanted,
You didn't notice that one when you were doing it?
I just didn't care.
Correct answer. Okay. All right. These three guys, if you've watched AEW long enough, you know that AEW was built on the 4 pillars concept. It started out, it was Hangman, it was Jack, it was MJF, it was Sammy Guevara, and Darby Allin. Those were the 4 pillars of AEW. Tell me these are not 3 pillars now. Right here. You had MJF, and that's the 4 pillars of AEW. 3 of the 4 pillars of AEW right now is these 3 guys.
I can't argue
they that?
Like, it feels like it.
Have they supplanted Sammy and Darby and and Jack as the three pillars. Have they supplanted that? Are these now three of the four pillars of AEW?
All Randy's going to spend more time on this than me. Are you fucking kidding me? Have they supplanted Jack and Sammy? I'm sorry. Where are these people again? What are they doing? Are they working at McDonald's? Is
Darby's
that what's
coming back
happening?
from Everest, so that's
Yeah.
actually a thing.
No, Darby's great. Darby's great. I
Well,
never.
he is one of the four
Public
pillars.
wrestler.
The other two, I'll grant you.
Yeah, the other two are fucking. Jack had a splash there for a bit, and they. Speaking of bad creative, well, there you go. But yeah, like I don't watch a ton of AEW, but when these guys are on screen, and hey, this is coming from a CM Punk fan. Hangman's great. I like Hangman. I think he's fantastic in ring. In fact, I wish those two, when Punk was in that company, could have got along better because I think they could have worked more magic than what ended up happening. I love Swerve. Huge Swerve guy. And I think Ospreay is probably the best in-ring wrestler on the planet. My problem with him is I think he's fucking awful on the mic and he presents himself terribly in promos. I don't think he offers anything at all in regards to that. And he could learn from the two guys that are on each of his sides right there. Obviously, MJF's a pillar. But yeah, I have way more faith in this foursome, pardon the term, than the previous foursome. It's a good foundation to build on.
Randy?
Yeah, these guys have definitely supplanted pretty much just about everybody. Still, I mean, yeah, Jack. I mean, Hangman. To me, Hangman was always one of the pillars, regardless, because he's one of the originals. They pushed him up front. Obviously, Jericho had to take the title when they first started because they needed a name, a recognizable name to have their world title when they first launched. He's great with long-term storytelling with him and Omega. So to me, Hangman's always been one of the pillars. I could replace Jack with him, no problem, or even Sammy. Sammy's doing Ring of Honor tag title holder with Dustin. That's fine. I think he's found his spot. He gets he's married. He's got a kid, so probably doing the Ring of Honor stuff probably helps him with that. So we're good there. But these three, I mean, just between Swerve and Hangman alone, those two have another great example of long-term storytelling. They've just been putting on amazing matches against each other. They have great interactions whenever they're in the ring together, whether it's on the mic. Ospreay was one of those guys that you're right. He's probably one of the best wrestlers in the world, but he also is one of those guys that will do what's best for business. He's not that super selfish guy, and neither is Hangman for that matter. What surprised me came out is that both of them wanted each other to win the match, at Double or Nothing, and they pitched for it, both of them, and it took them till an hour or two before the event even started before they finally came up with a finish. So these guys all know what it takes to do what's best for business, what's best for AEW, and that's because of the way these guys have been performing lately and for quite a few months now, that's why the product's getting a lot better. Plus, obviously, better storytelling, things of that nature. But yeah, these guys right here, I can see them going years back and forth with each other, even if it's not even trading the belt, just having great matches and great interactions.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think Hangman and Swerve are on their way to being sort of the AEW answer to Cena and Orton. In the sense of no matter what else is going on around, you can put them together and be confident you're going to get something good out of it. That's a pair that I'll admit, looking back on it at the time, yeah, I got tired of seeing them together. I got tired of seeing Orton and Cena together every month. But looking back on it, they always delivered. They always delivered, which is more than I can say about a lot of other main events of the era. And that's something I think that is very easily accomplishable between these two. They have a generational feud, which
didn't deliver last month.
Well, that's
Pardon me, they delivered. They delivered you some 5-day-old pizza.
it's they delivered about what I expected them to deliver. But it's that it has the potential to be that for a long time. Putting these three, you're right, you're absolutely right. Osprey is one of the best in ring talents in the world right now, bar none. I've felt that about him for a very long time. I've watched him blossom in this business from when he was nothing more than a cruiserweight guy coming in and working the junior heavyweight division in Japan and being nothing to growing up to be the leader of the United Empire to being the IWGP champion to becoming one of the greatest talents in the world, just step by step by step, and he has accomplished it at every level. And every time there's been a question of can he take the next step, he takes the next step. When he came over, when he signed to join AEW permanently, it was a question of, well, can he deliver? Can he deliver outside of the ring? And he has. Are his promos the best? No. But, if there's one area of professional wrestling that I think is the most easily glossed over or improved upon through external means, absolutely. All it takes is somebody else to talk for him. And that's a very easily accomplishable thing to do in professional wrestling. He just needs a mouthpiece. He is comparable to Brock Lesnar in that sense, an A1 talent in the ring, but on the mic, sometimes leaves a lot to be desired. I think that'll change as Will gets more comfortable on the mic, because he's not comfortable on the mic. You can see that. He is very uncomfortable. I like it, and you'll have to bear with me for this comparison, but Will Ospreay is Bret Hart in 1988, 1989. He's not comfortable on the mic yet. He doesn't understand the promo. Like in Japan, that's not something you do. It's not something you have to worry about. You go out there and you work. You don't have to worry about the mic. But if you look at like Bret in the early days of the Hart Foundation, Jim's doing 90% of the talking when it's not Jimmy. Bret will maybe come in for a word here or there. He's just not comfortable on the mic yet, but he can deliver in the ring, just like Bret could. Now, is his career going to be the same? Well, who knows? But I think he's destined for greatness. He is one of the best in-ring talents in the world, and those are all easily comparable to Bret, who was one of the best in-ring talents in the world for a very long time. So, I think as Will gets more comfortable on the mic, he will improve that element of his game, because that's something that repetition. It's something he's never had to do in his career. He's never had to rely on his talking people into the building. It's always been on his skill and his name. It's never been to talk them in. Now he's got to talk them in. And I think that, it's safe to say that as he improves on the mic, he will become more than what he is right now. I think in 5 or 6 years, we'll look back and be like, man, you remember when Will couldn't cut a promo? Because he'll get better through repetition. It's the nature of the business. Even somebody like, look at John Cena's, early 2000s promos. They were dog shit. He became one of the best talkers in the business. Not everybody is The Rock. The Rock is someone who took the opposite path. He was all charisma, all talk, and then learned how to wrestle. And got to the top on his ability to talk. He's passable. I'll say this to this day. The Rock is passable in the ring. He's not good in the ring. He's not great in the ring. He's passable in the ring because he was put in the ring with great wrestlers. When you're surrounded by Steve Austin and The Undertaker and Kurt Angle and Triple H, you're going to look great. I mean, for God's sakes, The Undertaker made fucking Giant Gonzalez a main event talent. Like, come on now. It's not because Gonzalez could wrestle. I'll tell you that right now. Like, it just, Kurt Angle could wrestle a paper bag.
I put Gonzalez up there with Steamboat for sure.
I was not expecting you to pull Steamboat's name out of there. I'll say that. But in the chat, JT, are these better than the big three in the WWE in ring? Absolutely.
I was going to say, let's be real here. The big three is, you cannot even have Roman and Cena in the big three because they're hardly there. The big three in WWE right now are Cody, Seth, Punk in terms of how the product's driven. And in ring, yeah, they're way better than WWE's big three. And this is a Punk guy saying it. It's just fact. On the mic, I would say Swerve and Hangman can go and match up
Mhm.
with Seth and Cody. I think Punk's the best of the six of them on the mic for sure. But in ring, it's not close. AEW is miles ahead.
It, anyone who makes the argument that in ring is better in WWE is not watching. It's as simple as that.
No, they're not.
Like they timed it out in a 2-hour Saturday night's main event. There was less than an hour in ring, less than an hour in ring, and this is on a premium live event. Pay-per-views, the numbers are much better. They're 3 hours, and you're lucky if you get an hour in ring. It's ridiculous. I'd argue AEW has the opposite problem. There's too much in ring.
Well, it was what Hangman and Osprey went like almost an hour
The
by
match
themselves.
finished at like 12:30, something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, like
and it was a hell of a sequence too.
like I just in ring, I'll take it all day long. I'll watch it, and don't get me wrong, I feel like you know, I have a wrestling hangover the day after an AEW pay per view. But there are definitely other things we'll talk about in future weeks, like how bad continuing to counter program AEW pay per views makes the WWE look. That's something we're going to talk about.
I think both. I mean, yeah, I think they're both bad in terms of how they present their pay per views. One's way too long. Most people have children and work the next day. It's way too long. It's been way too long for years. In WWE, there's not enough
It's the
matches
opposite
and
problem.
too much. Yeah, the sweet spot's somewhere in the middle for both. I wonder if either one will find it.
3 hours of in ring content. That's the sweet spot for a pay per view, and it needs to be as close to that number as possible for a pay per view, a premium live event, whatever you want to call it. You need the in ring to be close to 3 hours. But I digress. Okay, so we had another topic. We're going to kill that because we are pushing 2.5 hours.
We all know it's bullshit, anyways.
Exactly. There's no way in hell that's going to happen.
Vince is not buying back WWE. Not now. Not ever. End of story.
He's out and he does not have the money.
Even if he did, it's not worth it.
TKO is not going to sell.
Nope. We'll talk about we have to cut costs, but we're making record profits narrative another time, because I definitely want to dump into that one and go to town on them for some of their recent cutthroat business practices while claiming record profits. But we'll get back to that one.
No. Hang on. We'll spend a minute on that.
Okay.
Because I am tired of the R-Truth nonsense. And I am tired, and Johnny, maybe you'll actually back me up on this one.
Okay.
I'm tired of Sean Ross Sapp brown-nosing fucking AEW and slamming WWE while claiming to be a journalist. And I'm tired of the fuckheads that busted open claiming to be journalists, and all they do is brown-nose WWE and slam AEW. I legitimately don't know who to turn to anymore in terms of listening to wrestling content, because they all have a fucking agenda. Okay, Fightful was the ones going on about, oh, well, instead of cutting guys in the middle of their contract and not letting them go elsewhere, how about you just let the contract run out? That's exactly what they fucking did with R-Truth. They didn't cut him before the contract was up. They let it run out. He's 54 years old, people. Enough. Stop moving the fucking goalposts.
I think the problem in this instance is that we're trying to wrap everyone with the same needle and thread. Like I think, the big comparable right now is Carlito is kind of getting painted with that same brush right now, because they're letting his contract expire in 2 weeks.
He's fucking done too. Who cares?
But that's it. Like you can't compare those two. You can't. It's not even that. I think it's you can't both be. We're making record profits every pay-per-view. We're setting record gates. We're setting record profits, and yet your narrative is, well, we have to cut live events because we're not making money. We're not turning a profit. We have to cut talents because we're not making a profit. We're not making money. You can't be doing both simultaneously. You can't be making record profits and cutting people because we can't afford it. You can't be doing both.
If they're saying that, and I haven't seen any of them actually say that, other than that's, no offense, you kind of sound like Fightful at the moment. If that's what WWE is telling the talent, then yes,
Well,
that
that's
is
what the talents are saying.
then that's bullshit for sure. But they can do both. That's called fucking business. It just is. You can't be okay with AEW forcing Ricky Starks and other to sit and not release them, even though they're being paid. But then, sorry, you can't be okay with that and then not be okay with the WWE's Truth and Carlito thing. Because I'm sorry, that makes you a fucking hypocrite, and that goes to anybody who has that take. But if the talent is saying this is what WWE and them are saying, yeah, that is bullshit. Then for sure. But that's business. And you can compare Carlito and R-Truth because they both serve the same purpose on screen. They're both comic relief characters. That's it. R-Truth much more effective. And I
Difference
like
is
R-Truth.
one's over, one's not.
Oh,
One
agreed.
is
Totally.
one of the most well liked person in the locker room. The other one is not. Like, it's R-Truth is the guy. He is the guy that he is your super utility player. Every
Maybe
team
so,
needs a
but
super utility player.
that doesn't mean that you need to pay him $350,000 a year. You can have him.
I'm sorry, but if you're a company that's going to justify paying $7 million to a guy who's showing up 2 or 3 times a year, maybe you're cutting costs in the wrong place.
No argument there, but at the end of the day, it is a business. And they shouldn't be using that as an excuse while posting record profits, which they are. It's a publicly traded company. We all see it. It's very two-faced to do that for sure. But at the same time, the people, there's way too many people moving the goalposts on this.
That's the
People
problem.
retire.
If
People
your
get old.
response is we don't have a spot for you on the roster, we're not going to use you. Your contract expires in a month, 2 months, 2 weeks, whatever. We're just not going to, we're not going to renegotiate. We're not going to pick up the ups or whatever. We're not going to extend your contract. That's fine. No beef. Same as
That
AEW.
should be what
They're
they're
letting people
saying.
go. They're doing the same thing. Like, Abaddon. There's a whole host of them who are coming up on their contracts expiring.
Mhm.
There's no place for them on the roster, so they're just letting them walk. That's fine. That's all well and good. I don't hate that. But
Let me ask you this: would you rather see Ricky Starks and I almost called him Malachi, Alistair Black on the main roster, or R-Truth and Carlito? And if your answer is R-Truth and Carlito, I don't know what to tell you, people, because it
well,
shouldn't be.
my answer is R-Truth only because when he shows up, it's actually interesting. Right now, what are they doing with either of the other guys?
I've found Alistair Black stuff so far to be pretty good. I don't like who he's feuding with because I think the Miz should be the next on the chopping block, and from the sounds of it, he might be. But it's sports in a way. There's only so much room. You can't fucking have. This is an AEW problem. A roster where you never fucking see the person. And I'm not saying you never saw R-Truth. R-Truth, he had a great last year for what he was compared to where he was a couple years ago. Um, I think he's hilarious. I love watching clips where he's trying to make people break. But eventually it's time to move on. People used to whine all the time, like I said, about cutting guys in the middle of their contract. Well, they didn't cut him in the middle of the contract. They let him see out his contract and choose not to renew. That doesn't make the company bad for doing business. What makes the company bad is if they're giving bullshit excuses like, we can't afford it. They can't afford it. They just didn't see value in you anymore. And I know that's a hard thing to hear, but that's how it should have been worded, and not using the money excuse when you're a publicly traded company, because there's nowhere to hide behind. AEW is not publicly traded, so they can hide behind that a little. WWE can't. At least fucking man up and be honest. And kudos to CM Punk, who
AEW
had
is
some.
the opposite side of that. They're not cutting people. They're paying you through the contract, whether that's best for you or not.
Well, that's my point, though. The point I made earlier. There's when people want to be released and you're not using them and you're benching them because of spite. And I'm sorry, that's a fact, not an opinion. That's a problem. Just like it's a problem if they told, is his real name Ron Killings? I don't know.
Yes.
But okay, if they told him we can't afford you anymore, that's bullshit. But there are tons of people moving the goalposts here, and for both companies, it's a fucking
absolutely.
business. People, it's a
Absolutely.
business, and you know what? One day Phil Brooks is going to walk out of WWE, and that's going to be it. And this guy's going to be upset. And but it's business. And when you don't offer that value anymore, which by the way, I'm pretty sure R-Truth was making significantly more than the minimum. It it
How much
you know,
money?
I don't know. It's too much goalpost moving, but boy, you are real scumbags if you're using money for an excuse when people can see your, publicly traded companies
I mean, we
fund.
can for sure see they're using that because that's what they're using to cut live events.
Okay, the live events thing's a good thing, in my opinion. I'm sorry, it
I
just
don't.
is.
I don't. You
I
wrestlers
get the
got to
breaking
work.
through.
If they're not in the ring, they will get. They'll lose the edge.
How's it any different with AEW?
I'm not arguing with that. They need a. I don't want to say a more rigorous schedule, but they need more. At
But you
least when
can't
they.
go back to the way things were.
I'm not
Things that
saying you have to go back to the way things
like
were.
like you were causing families to break up, literally
You,
families to
I
break up.
think, I think the ideal schedule is you should be running, 3 nights a week, 3 shows a week. I think that's the number. It gives guys a chance to work. It gives people a chance to stay in the ring, and it's important. You need to be in the ring to improve. You need to be in the ring to, stay in ring. Like ring shape is a thing,
Well, we've seen that with Cena, so
exactly.
But to give you an idea of the way AEW handled the contract recently, Mariah May debuted on NXT tonight, so she's already made.
Oh,
She's
did
already
she?
jumped it. Yep.
Mhm.
So
Well,
she's
hey,
there.
Let's be honest. Tony adjusted his ways.
He did.
Tony was spiteful for a long time, and a lot of it was related to CM Punk, and
I
I
think
believe he let all those guys go now. There's none of them that
yeah.
are still stuck. So
At this
should have been
point, I
done much
think
sooner.
for both companies, now that Punk's doing what he's doing and the way AEW's recovered, I think they're in their both companies in their happy place in terms of anything that has to do with CM Punk. So it happened. We've moved on, and now we're to the point where WWE or at least TKO Group is starting to do some of the similar things that AEW is doing and letting people walk after once their contracts are up. Vince did not do that, and that's the difference here. I think the biggest thing here in terms of R-Truth is just how loved he was by the locker room. I think that's really the big difference.
And the fans.
Because at the outpouring, I mean, think about it. Last night during the women's match for the Money in the Bank qualifier, you heard the crowd erupt, "We want truth." So
They did it during the main event too.
So, this is, that's the reason why it's such a big deal. I don't think it so much has to do with, hey, we can't forge you, even though from what I understand, TKO put it on Triple H to make the call on who to release. I just think it's just the quality of the character that people have grown to love. I think that's really what, and the locker room. All I've seen on social media is just amazing stories about R-Truth, and the dude's going to land on his feet somewhere. If not, WWE will probably give him a Legends contract. So
It'd be stupid to take it.
But you know what I mean. It's just I think it's not the last we've seen of him. People are whether it's TNA, AEW, anybody else out there, GCW, New Japan, whomever, someone's going to have interest. They're going to throw money at him. Indies are going to throw money at him. He's going to be fine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's made more money than the three of us are ever going to see in our lifetime. More than
no shit.
No doubt.
So, not unless one of us wins a lottery or something. But
No doubt.
Anything's possible.
And I like it. Hey, I'm not shitting on R-Truth. I've always liked R-Truth. Okay, I would watch R-Truth on my TV over fucking American Made or over the fucking Viking Raiders or whatever. They do nothing for me. They're all
That's bad
fucking.
booking.
They're all
Yeah.
a waste of TV space.
I know.
By the way, I'm not including Chad Gable in that. I like Chad Gable, but it is what it is. There's only so much room, and we don't always get the whole story though, fellas. Either like we don't know that first of all, we don't know how much. Sorry, I know I'm like super in the dark here. We don't. No one can say for certain because you can't trust any of the outlets. You cannot trust Fightful. If you do, you're an idiot. You cannot trust Busted Open. If you do, you're an idiot. You know, the only reliable wrestling thing that I know of anymore is Post Wrestling. I don't know if any of you guys ever checked them out. Reliable. I believe they're Canadian too. Um, Not that that matters, but they don't have a horse in the race. They're candid about everything, and they've done excellent coverage on all the fucking McMahon shit too. Um, but you don't know that R-Truth wasn't offered a contract at a much lower rate than he was working with before. Not saying he was, but you don't know that he wasn't, and you don't know that he didn't say no, and then they said, "Hey, then we're walking away." That shit happens all the time in all forms of business. Take the character out of it. R-Truth's still a human being, and if he said no, that's his right to say no. We simply don't know. There's just no way. People say dirt sheet this, dirt sheet that. Well, you know what? The dirt sheets have been run through the mud the last 3 or 4 years, whether you go back to Brawl Out and all the misinformation there from both sides, or any of the other shit that's come out since on any of the matters since. Just the last few years have done an incredible amount of damage to who you can listen to and who you can't anymore in terms of what's going on. I'm not saying people don't get shit right, but a lot of the times they have a horse in the race and there's a lot of truth bending going on.
I'll say this under the category of take everything this man says with a pound of salt. Coach today on his. Yeah, I know. That's why I said pound of salt. Pound of salt.
Owen Hart's still alive. He's gonna make a. Oh wait.
Pound of salt. But Coach, in an interview with Vince Russo on his podcast Jabroni Network.
Oh Jesus, it just keeps getting better.
Yeah, it does. Said that Truth was offered a contract prior to this going down, but he turned it down. Now, true or not, I quite frankly doubt that based solely on the source, but
Yeah.
Take that with a pound of salt, but it is out there that
that's his right. Like you just said, why should he accept a Legends contract? Let's say he was making 900,000 a year. I'm not saying he was, but for example, and they offered him the minimum to stick around, and it was going to be a lighter workload, and he felt like he had more value than that. That's his right to say no. And if people don't like it, too fucking bad. That's every walk of life. If someone offers you a certain amount of money to do something and you think you're worth more, then you should try to get more.
No, absolutely. We segued. We went way off the sheet here, but that tends to happen around these here parts, and will happen again in the future, I'm sure. All right, we're gonna cut that. We have you scheduled for rant time. Did you still want to take that?
No, we're good.
No? Okay.
We run a little long. This show is run about 20 minutes longer than our normal Tuesday show will go.
So all right, so that is going to do it for this first Tuesday night episode of The Mask of Fear. I hope you guys had fun, and as we now all take off our masks and we can just be ourselves for the last few minutes of this show, we can say goodbye, good night, so long, farewell, Avita, and adios, goodbye, see you next week, or however else you want to say that. Sean, what do you want to plug?
I'll do Randy first. I got too much to go over.
Randy?
Well, currently over on X at Giggity Giles. Obviously, I'm one of the mods on the Mask of Fear Facebook group. I'll be trying to I'll be posting different things and let Johnny do his thing. I did post something earlier that hopefully everybody will take the time to read and comment. Basically, the question is, if you had the opportunity to create a horror TV show, what would how many seasons would you use to get your to tell your story, and exactly what would you have your horror villain do? And also every Tuesday you will find me here. I'm sure there'll be some Patreon content down the road that I will be a part of as well. And other than that, yeah, that's about it. Sean?
Well, we'll start with that. The number one way you can support the channel, you can either become a channel sponsor privately, which funding gets transferred through PayPal, or you can sign up for our Patreon, our new Patreon program, which is patreon.com/ The Mask of Fear. I almost said Fandom Empire, Force of Habit. Patreon.com/The Mask of Fear. We have 2 brand new monthly Halloween shows debuting. The first, which is going to happen in a couple of weeks, The Curse of Thorn, where we're looking at various Halloween rumors and speculation and just some interesting content that Matt and I come up with. And then the Legacy of Halloween, named after our very popular Facebook group, we'll dive into the history and the lore and the sequels that almost were in the Legacy of Halloween. You'll still get short form content of those sequels that almost were from the Taking Shape novels. And we might have some news in regards to some of that too, but I gotta wait to be able to say anything on that front. Not my call. But you'll be able to find The Curse of Thorn at a new $5 tier, which will come out this week, and the Legacy of Halloween at a $13 tier. We'll have other tiers mixed in there. Our Patreon recording night for a lot of us is going to be Wednesday nights. We're going to meet up and just do some meetings behind the scenes. And when Randy, Johnny, and I have something to record for Patreon, that'll be the night we do it. And sometimes it'll be live, and that's why I'm saying that. So if you're up late on Wednesdays and we're doing a live piece for Patreon, that's where you'll be able to find it. It'll be Wednesday nights after AEW Dynamite airs. It won't be a ton of the time, but now and then. You can always super chat. It helps the channel out a lot. But free ways that you can support the channel that don't cost anything. Click the thumbs up button. Helps a lot. Leave a comment. Share the video. Check us out on social media. On X, we are at The Mask of Fear. We're at The Mask of Fear on Blue Sky. Or at The Mask of Fear 31 on Instagram and Threads. And then the Facebook groups are The Mask of Fear and The Legacy of Halloween. Big thank you to everybody who has always supported us. And this is just the beginning of a new chapter. Really thought the show quality tonight was the strongest we've done in a very, very long time. And the chat was active. So thank you for that. We really appreciate you, because without you, there's no us.
Absolutely could not have said it better myself. You can find me here, there, everywhere, here every Tuesday night, and occasionally, on any of the other content we have here on this channel or on Patreon. You can also find me over twitch.tv/bros before pros. Whenever there's a game I want to play that I'll stream, we'll do that over there. All right. So that is going to do it for this week's episode of The Mask of Fear. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you all had fun. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already down below. Answer any of the multiple choice questions we asked throughout the course of the show, or just leave a general comment. Tell us what you think, what you thought. Give us your thoughts on the different things we talked about. Do you agree with us on the topics? Do you disagree with us on a topic? Let us know in the comments down below. And like we said, head over Facebook. Facebook.com/maskofear, the group there. Every day right now we're doing content. Some of it is, some of it's trivia. That was today. Today was trivia. Nobody's answered it yet. Nobody's answered the question yet. Somebody answer the question. Come on, it's not that hard. Head on over to Facebook, Mask of Fear, and take a look. Friday, Face Off Friday. Combatants, 2 horror icons. You know them both. I know you do, because we talked about them both on this episode tonight. And tell me who'd win. Who wouldn't win? Who'd lose? Why would they lose? Who would win? Why would they win? That's on Friday. Keep your eye out every other day for something else to pop up over there on the channel, over there on the Facebook group. All right, Sean, take us home.
Big thanks to Johnny and Randy for doing this. Big thanks to the people that help out behind the scenes. Jade, Tommy B, Kieran still kicking around, Sham, Travis. Big thanks to our channel sponsors one more time. Jesse Storytime Spectacular, Colleague Nation, that's Ryan, Backtrack Cinema, Mr. Jason Nike, and Matt. And to our patrons, without any of you, we're not here. And just have a fantastic night. And yes, oppression is in fact the Mask of Fear.